On New Year's Eve, my daughter-in-law threw my suitcase into the snow and told me I was being sent to a state-run nursing home because I was nothing but a burden. She thought I was just a broke retired mechanic who had outlived his usefulness. She had no idea that the mansion she was standing in, the luxury car she drove, and the very ground beneath her high heels actually belonged to me. By the time she found out the truth, it was too late to say sorry. My name is Booker Lewis, and I am 70 years old. What happened that night changed everything I thought I knew about family. If you have ever been underestimated by the people you sacrificed everything for, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from because I want to know how far my story has traveled. The bass from the music was vibrating the floorboards of the master bedroom. It was 11:30 at night on New Year's Eve. Downstairs, my son Dante and his wife Courtney were hosting the party of the year. I could hear the clinking of crystal glasses and the roar of laughter from people who had never worked a day of hard labor in their lives. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at a framed photo of my late wife Rose. I just wanted to sleep. My knees were aching from the cold front moving in, and the noise was making my head pound. I was wearing my favorite flannel shirt and a pair of comfortable work pants. They were clean, but they were old, just like me. Suddenly, my bedroom door flew open without a knock. It was Courtney. She was wearing a silver sequined dress that probably cost more than my first car. Her face was flushed with expensive champagne, but her eyes were cold, stone cold. She looked me up and down with a sneer of absolute disgust curling her lip. "Booker, what are you doing?" she snapped. "I told you to stay in the guest room in the back if you were not going to dress appropriately. One of the investors just saw you walking to the bathroom looking like a janitor. You are embarrassing us." I stood up slowly, trying to ignore the pain in my joints. This was my house, or at least it used to be before I put it in Dante's name to help him look successful for his promotion. I looked at her and said, "Courtney, I live here. I needed to use the restroom. I am not going to hide in my own home." Courtney laughed, but it was a dry, sharp sound. "Your home? That is funny. You have not contributed a dime to this household in 6 months, Booker. You just sit here eating our food and using our heat. You are useless now. You are just a drain on our resources." She stepped into the room and grabbed the handle of my old leather suitcase, which was sitting in the corner. I had packed it earlier that morning just to reorganize my things, but I had not put them back yet. She dragged it toward the door. I asked her what she was doing. She did not answer. She marched down the hallway, dragging my life behind her. I followed her as fast as I could, my heart hammering in my chest. We reached the top of the grand staircase. Below us, about 50 guests were mingling in the foyer. The music stopped as they saw Courtney dragging the suitcase with me trailing behind her. Everyone looked up. I saw the judgment in their eyes. They saw an old black man in work clothes interrupting their elegant evening. Courtney stopped at the front door and threw it open. A gust of freezing wind and snow blew into the warm house. "We have made a decision," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Dante and I have decided that you require professional care. We booked a room for you at Sunny Hills Nursing Center. The van will be here in the morning. But frankly, I cannot stand the sight of you ruining my party for one more second." She heaved the suitcase out the door. It landed with a dull thud in the snowbank. "You can wait on the porch," she said. "Or go find a motel. I do not care. Just get out." I stood frozen. I looked for Dante, my son, the boy I had raised on my own after Rose passed. The boy whose college tuition I paid for by working double shifts at the steel mill and taking private contracting jobs until my fingers bled. Dante was standing by the fireplace holding a glass of scotch. He looked at me. I saw him hesitate. For one second I thought he would be the man I raised him to be. I thought he would step forward and defend his father. "Dante," I said softly. He looked at his wife. He looked at the wealthy investors he was trying to impress. Then he looked at the floor. "Sorry, Dad," he mumbled, barely moving his lips. "Courtney is really stressed out. Maybe it is for the best." The silence that followed broke my heart into more pieces than I could count. It hurt more than the arthritis. It hurt more than the time I broke 3 ribs on a construction site. My own son was throwing me away like garbage because his wife told him to. I did not scream. I did not beg. I have never begged a day in my life, and I was not going to start now. I walked past Courtney. She was smiling a victorious little smirk as if she had just taken out the trash. I stepped out onto the porch, and the cold air hit me like a physical blow. Courtney slammed the heavy oak door behind me. I heard the lock click. Then I heard the music start up again. They went right back to their party. I walked down the steps and picked up my suitcase. It was wet and heavy. The snow was falling hard now, covering the driveway. I shivered not just from the cold, but from the shock. I reached into my pocket to grab my phone. I needed to call my lawyer. I needed to call someone. I pulled out my phone and dialed, but the call failed immediately. I looked at the screen. No service. A text message popped up from the service provider. Your plan has been canceled by the account holder, Courtney. She had access to everything. She had cut off my phone before she even threw me out. She wanted me stranded. She wanted me helpless. I stood there at the end of the long driveway, looking back at the house. Through the large bay windows, I could see them laughing. I could see Dante pouring another drink. They thought this was the end of the story. They thought they had won. They forgot who I was. They saw a 70-year-old man in a flannel shirt. They forgot that I was the structural engineer who designed the very foundation that house stood on. They forgot that before I retired, I was the head of one of the biggest infrastructure firms in the state. I had spent a lifetime building things that could withstand hurricanes and earthquakes. Did they really think a little snow and a greedy daughter-in-law could break me? I turned my back on the house and started walking toward the main road. The wind was biting through my thin jacket. It was 3 miles to the nearest bus station. My hands were shaking and my vision was blurry from the tears I refused to let fall. But with every step, the sadness was being replaced by something else. Something hotter. Something stronger. I was not just a father who had been kicked out. I was a man who had been betrayed. And as I trudged through the snow on that dark New Year's Eve, I made a promise to my late wife, Rose. I promised her that I would not let them destroy what we had built. I reached the highway. A single pair of headlights appeared in the distance. I did not know where I was going to sleep that night, but I knew one thing for sure. When I came back to this house, I would not be knocking on the door. I would be holding the deed. But first I had to survive the night, and I had no idea that the person who would save me was sitting on a cold bench at the Greyhound station waiting for a miracle of her own. The drive to my daughter's house felt like navigating a minefield. 40 years ago in the humid jungles overseas, my job was to find hidden death before it found us. I was a combat engineer, a specialist in explosives and booby traps. The rule was simple. If the ground looks too disturbed, it is a trap. If the ground looks too perfect, it is also a trap. You survive by noticing the things that everyone else ignores. A bent twig, a wire thin as a spiderweb glinting in the sun. Tonight, the streets of this gated community looked perfect. Manicured lawns covered in a thin layer of frost. Security lights casting long, expensive shadows. But my gut was screaming the same way it did back in 1972. I parked my rusted truck 2 blocks away. I did not want to give Chase the satisfaction of seeing my old vehicle next to his fleet of luxury imports. The walk to the house was cold. The air bit at my exposed face, but I barely felt it. All I could feel was the phantom weight of my daughter's hand in mine. Nia, my baby girl, fighting for every breath in a sterile white room while I stood out here in the dark. I approached the house expecting to see crime scene tape. Chase had said it was a break-in. He said robbers had forced their way in and beaten Nia when she surprised them. I walked up the driveway, scanning the perimeter. My eyes shifted from father mode to soldier mode. I knelt down by the front door. The porch light was on, illuminating the heavy oak entrance. I ran my rough fingers over the door frame. The wood was smooth, pristine. I checked the lock plate. No scratches, no dents, no signs of a crowbar or a heavy kick. If robbers broke in, they must have had a key. Or maybe the door was open for them from the inside. I did not go in the front. I heard noise coming from the back, a low, thumping bass, the clinking of glass, laughter, laughter. That sound hit me harder than a physical blow. My daughter was in a coma. Her brain was swelling, and someone at her house was laughing. I walked around the side of the house, moving through the shadows of the hedges. I peered through the wrought iron gate into the backyard. It looked like a page out of a lifestyle magazine. The patio heaters were glowing orange, warming the winter air. There was a catered bar set up near the pool. About 30 people were standing around holding wine glasses and eating hors d'oeuvres. Chase was in the center of them. My son-in-law. The man who had promised to protect my daughter. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly pension. He held a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, and he was gesturing wildly, telling a story that had the circle of guests chuckling. I pushed the gate open. It creaked, but the music drowned it out. I stepped into the light. For a moment, nobody noticed me. I was a ghost at the feast. An old black man in a worn canvas jacket standing amidst a sea of designer coats and pearls. Then a woman near the edge of the crowd turned. Her smile faltered. She nudged her husband. The silence spread like a ripple in a pond until it reached Chase. He turned slowly. When he saw me, his eyes did not widen with fear or guilt. They narrowed with annoyance just for a fraction of a second before he plastered on a tragic smile. It was a performance. I had seen lesser actors win awards. "Silas," he boomed, walking toward me with his arms open. Everyone, I did not expect him to make it. He hugged me. The smell of expensive scotch and sandalwood cologne filled my nose. It made me want to retch. I stood stiff as a board, my arms at my sides. He pulled back, keeping a hand on my shoulder, gripping it just a little too hard. He turned to his guests. "Everyone, this is Silas, Nia's father." A murmur of sympathetic noises went through the crowd. "Poor man. So tragic. He is a bit confused," Chase continued, dropping his voice to a stage whisper that was meant to be heard. "The doctor said the shock was too much for him. He has been imagining all sorts of things. You know how it is with the older generation. Sometimes the mind just snaps under pressure." I looked at him. I looked at his perfect teeth and his mocking eyes. "You are having a party," I said. My voice was low and gravelly. Chase sighed, shaking his head as if he were dealing with a toddler. "It is not a party, Silas. It is a fundraiser. All these wonderful people came together on short notice to raise money for Nia's medical bills. We are just trying to make the best of a horrific situation." He looked around at his friends, seeking validation. "We have to be strong, right, folks? We cannot let the criminals win." A man in a blue suit stepped forward, swirling his wine. He looked at me with pity, but it was the kind of pity you give to a stray dog that you hope does not bite you. "Your son-in-law is a saint, Mr. Lewis," the man said. "You should be grateful he is handling the logistics. Most men would crumble." Chase squeezed my shoulder again. His fingers dug into my collarbone. "Silas has always been a bit spirited," Chase said. His tone shifted. It was subtle. If you were not listening for it, you would miss it. But I heard it. It was the tone men used to use when they refused to serve me at lunch counters 50 years ago. "You know how these things go," Chase said with a tight smile. "Violence is just inherent in some backgrounds. Silas here has a hard time controlling his temper. It is just his nature. We try to manage it, but tonight is difficult." I felt the heat rise in my neck. He was painting me as the angry, aggressive black man. He was planting the seed so that if I exploded, if I punched him in his lying throat, everyone here would just nod and say, "See, Chase was right. The old man is dangerous." I looked at the guests. They were all white. They were all nodding. They looked at me with fear now masked as concern. To them, I was not a grieving father. I was a ticking time bomb that Chase was bravely trying to defuse. I took a deep breath. In the Army, they taught us that when you step on a pressure plate, you do not lift your foot. You freeze. You assess. You wait. I stepped away from Chase's grip. I brushed off my shoulder as if he had left dirt on it. "I am just here to get Nia's things," I said. My voice was calm. Calmer than the grave. Chase blinked. He expected me to yell. He wanted me to yell. "Of course," he said, recovering quickly. "Go right ahead. Try not to make a mess inside. The cleaning crew is coming tomorrow." I turned my back on him. I walked toward the sliding glass doors. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could hear the whispers, starting up again. "He is senile. He looks dangerous. Poor Chase." I stepped into the kitchen. It was dark compared to the patio. I stood there for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. I breathed in the scent of my daughter's home. It smelled like lavender and lemon. It smelled like her. I walked to the living room. I needed to find her bag. I needed to find anything that could tell me what happened. But as I scanned the room, my eyes caught something else. Back in the jungle, we looked for tripwires. In the suburbs, we looked for LEDs. High in the corner of the living room ceiling, a tiny green light blinked in the darkness. I froze. I looked at the hallway. Another green light. I looked at the kitchen island. A small, sleek device sat there with a camera lens pointed directly at the back door. Smart home cameras. Chase loved gadgets. He loved controlling things from his phone. He had bragged about this system at Thanksgiving. He said it recorded everything in 4K resolution and uploaded it directly to the cloud, if robbers had broken in. If they had beaten my daughter in this living room, the cameras would have seen it. And if there were no robbers, if the person who beat her was someone who had a key, someone who lived here, the cameras would have seen that too. I looked out the window. Chase was laughing again, throwing his head back. He thought he was safe. He thought he had spun the perfect narrative. He thought I was just a senile old man who could be dismissed with a few racist dog whistles and a glass of expensive wine. He forgot that I was an engineer. He forgot that I knew how to look for the things other people missed. He had staged the scene. He had lied to the police. But in his arrogance, he had forgotten to turn off his own eyes. I did not touch the cameras. I knew that if I tampered with them, he would get a notification. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the minesweeper. I walked to the mantel and picked up a small framed photo of Nia. I held it to my chest. "I am coming for him, baby girl," I whispered. I turned and walked out the front door past the pristine lock that had never been broken. I had a new mission now. I did not need to fight Chase with my fists. I needed to get into that cloud. And I knew exactly who to call. The war had just begun. The beep of the heart monitor was the only music I had left. It was a slow, rhythmic counting down of seconds that felt like hours. I sat in the plastic chair next to Nia's bed, holding her hand. Her skin felt paper thin. The doctor said she was stable, but the swelling in her brain was unpredictable. They used big words to tell me they did not know if she would ever wake up. I had just come back from the party at her house. The image of Chase laughing with a drink in his hand was burned into my retinas. I wanted to tell her what I saw. I wanted to tell her that her husband was celebrating while she was fighting for her life. But I stayed silent. I just squeezed her hand, hoping my calloused palm could transfer some of my strength to her. Then the door opened. The air in the room changed instantly. It went from sterile to suffocating. Chase walked in. He had changed out of his party clothes. Now he was wearing a somber gray suit, the kind you wear when you want to look like a grieving victim for the cameras. He did not look at Nia. He looked at the machines. He looked at the expensive equipment keeping her alive, and his face tightened. "You are still here, Silas," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried an edge that cut right through me. "I am not leaving her," I said. I did not look up. Chase walked over to the foot of the bed. He picked up the medical chart and flipped through it with the casual arrogance of a man checking a restaurant bill. "We need to be realistic," he said, closing the chart with a snap. "The doctors say the prognosis is poor. Keeping her on these machines is delaying the inevitable. It is cruel, Silas. Cruel to her. And frankly, it is financially irresponsible." I looked up then. Financially irresponsible. My daughter was lying there, and he was talking about money. "She is fighting," I said. "I can feel it." Chase let out a short, sharp laugh. "That is your grief talking, old man. Listen, I spoke to the hospital administrator. My insurance plan has a clause about long-term vegetative states. They are not going to cover this indefinitely. In fact, they are cutting coverage effective tomorrow morning." He paused to let that sink in. He wanted to see me panic. "I am moving her to a hospice facility upstate," he continued. "It is quiet, cheaper. They will make her comfortable until she passes. It is time to let her go, Silas. You need to accept that." I stood up. My knees popped, but I ignored the pain. "You are trying to kill her," I said. "You are trying to rush this because you do not want her to wake up." Chase stepped closer to me. He was taller than me, younger than me, and he smelled like mints and arrogance. He leaned down so his face was inches from mine. "Watch your mouth, old man," he whispered. "You are a guest in this city. You are a guest in this hospital. I am the husband. I hold the power of attorney. I decide when the plug gets pulled. Not you." He poked a finger into my chest. "Go back to your dirt farm, Silas. Go back to the country and die in your rocking chair. You are out of your depth here. Stop wasting my money and stop wasting my oxygen." He turned and walked out of the room without even touching his wife's hand. I stood there shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so hot it felt like lava in my veins. But then the rage turned into something else. A sharp, stabbing pain in my chest. I stumbled into the small bathroom attached to the hospital room. I locked the door and gripped the sink. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Gray stubble, sunken eyes. I coughed, a deep, wet cough that rattled my ribs. I spat into the white sink. Bright red blood swirled down the drain. I washed it away quickly, running the tap water cold. I had been hiding this for months. The doctors back home called it advanced lung fibrosis. a souvenir from years of inhaling dust and chemical fumes in the engineering cores. They gave me 6 months. That was 4 months ago. I wiped my mouth with a paper towel. I was dying. Chase was right about that. I did not have years. I might not even have weeks. But I had today. I stared at myself in the mirror. Chase wanted to move her to a hospice because a hospice does not ask questions about bruises. A hospice does not investigate. A hospice just writes a time of death and closes the file. And then the payout comes. It hit me like a physical slap. The insurance. Not the medical insurance he was complaining about, but the life insurance. Nia had mentioned it once on a phone call. She said Chase insisted on increasing their policies. $5 million. Double indemnity for accidental death, like a home invasion. He needed her to die from her injuries. If she woke up, she could talk. If she survived, the payout disappeared. He was not just a bad husband. He was an investor cashing out a failing asset. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked back to Nia's side. I looked at her bruised face. I looked at the way her arm was positioned. Nia, I whispered, I need you to help me. I need you to tell me where he slipped up. I closed my eyes, trying to remember every conversation we had in the last year. Nia complained about Chase constantly. She said he was controlling. She said he was paranoid. She said he watched the nanny like a hawk. He watches everything, Dad, she had said. He even put cameras in the hallway to watch the cleaning lady. I feel like I am living in a prison. My eyes snapped open. The cameras. I had seen the ones in the living room and the kitchen. But a man like Chase, a man obsessed with control and ownership, he does not stop at the kitchen. If he thought the cleaning lady was stealing silver, he would watch the silver. But where did he keep his real secrets? Where did he keep his safe? Where did he keep the things he truly valued? The master bedroom. If there were cameras downstairs, there had to be cameras upstairs. Hidden ones. Ones he used to spy on Nia when he was away on his business trips. And if those cameras were rolling the night of the attack, they did not just record a break-in. They recorded the truth. Chase thought he was smart. He thought he had scrubbed the security footage from the main server. I was sure he deleted the living room files, but hidden cameras usually operate on a separate loop, a backup system for the paranoid mind. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the morning. Chase would be asleep at the house, or maybe he was awake deleting files. I had to get back inside that house. I had to get into the master bedroom before he moved Nia to the hospice, before he erased the last trace of my daughter's life. I kissed Nia's forehead. Hold on, baby girl, I said. Daddy has one more minefield to cross. I walked out of the hospital room. The cough was building in my chest again, a ticking clock counting down the minutes I had left, but I pushed it down. I would cough later. I would die later. Tonight I had to be a soldier one last time. I parked my truck 3 streets over in a blind spot I had scouted days ago. The engine sputtered and died, and for a moment the only sound was the wheezing in my own chest. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the afternoon. On the screen of my burner phone, I pulled up the local news live stream. There he was, Chase, standing at a podium in front of the hospital microphones thrust in his face like spears. He looked devastated. He was wearing a black tie and his eyes were red-rimmed. He was telling the city that he was praying for a miracle for his wife, but preparing for the worst. It was the performance of a lifetime. I knew I had exactly 45 minutes. That was how long the press conference and the Q&A session would last. Then he would shake hands, take a few photos with the mayor, and get into his car. 45 minutes to break into a fortress without leaving a scratch. I walked to the back of the house, keeping to the tree line. The winter air was thin and sharp, and every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. My lungs were failing me. I could feel the fluid building up, a heavy tide rising in my chest. But I pushed it down. I swallowed the metallic taste of blood and focused on the door. It was a biometric smart lock. Top of the line. No keyhole to pick, no keypad to smash. It relied on a fingerprint or a signal from a registered smartphone. Chase thought this made him invincible. He thought technology was a wall that kept the world out. But I was an engineer before the internet was even born. I knew that every digital lock still controlled a mechanical bolt, and magnets do not care about encryption. I pulled a device from my pocket. It looked like a thick black wand. I had built it in my garage the night before, using parts from an old microwave and a solenoid starter from a lawnmower. It was an electromagnetic pulse generator. Crude. Ugly. But effective. I held the wand against the side of the lock housing right where the solenoid that controlled the deadbolt should be. I held my breath and pressed the trigger. There was no spark, no explosion, just a dull, heavy click from inside the door. The magnet had forced the bolt to retract just for a second. I pushed the handle. The door swung open. I slipped inside and closed it gently behind me. The silence of the house was oppressive. It was too clean, too perfect. It smelled of lemon polish and Chase's cologne. It did not smell like my daughter anymore. I stood still for 10 seconds counting. I needed to see if the alarm panel on the wall would start beeping. If the pulse had triggered a tamper alert, Chase would get a notification on his phone right in the middle of his speech. 10, 9, 8, 10. The panel remained dark. The pulse had fried the local sensor just enough to keep it confused. I was in, but the clock was ticking. I moved quickly, my heavy work boots making no sound on the hardwood floors. I had learned to walk silently in places where snapping a twig meant death. I moved past the kitchen, past the living room with its blinking cameras. I kept my head down, pulling the brim of my cap low just in case. I needed the brain. Every smart house has a brain, a hub where all the data goes. Chase was a control freak. He would not trust the cloud with everything. He would have a local backup, a physical server where he kept the files he did not want the world to see. I knew where he would put it. The basement. I found the door to the lower level disguised as a panel in the hallway wainscoting. It was locked. This time I used a simple shim of thin steel to slide the latch. I was not worried about being gentle down here. No guests ever saw the basement. I descended the stairs. The air grew cooler. The hum of electronics grew louder. It sounded like a hive of angry bees. At the bottom of the stairs I found a room that looked more like a bank vault than a basement. One wall was entirely glass looking into a climate-controlled wine cellar. But I did not care about the wine. I cared about the rack of black servers humming in the corner, blinking with blue and green lights. This was it. The repository of his life, the record of every movement in the house, every time a door opened, every time a light turned on, and hopefully every video file from the night my daughter was beaten. I sat down in the expensive leather chair in front of the terminal. My hands were trembling. I wiped them on my pants. I could not afford to make a mistake. I tapped the keyboard. The monitors flared to life. 3 screens glowing with a harsh white light. Enter password. I typed in Nia's birthday. Incorrect. I typed in the date of their wedding. Incorrect. I typed in the name of the street. Incorrect. I stopped. I closed my eyes and tried to think like him. Chase was a narcissist. He did not care about dates or sentimental memories. He cared about winning. He cared about himself. I typed in the amount of the insurance payout, $5 million. Incorrect. Access denied. System locked down in 3 attempts. I cursed under my breath. I looked at the tower. I could just steal the hard drives. I reached round the back to check the connections, but they were bolted into the rack with security screws. And even if I ripped them out, the data would be encrypted. Without the key, the drives were just useless bricks of metal. I was an engineer. I could build bridges. I could disarm landmines. I could fix anything with an engine. But this invisible wall of code and algorithms, this was a language I did not speak. I slammed my fist on the desk. The pain shot up my arm, but it felt good. It felt real. I looked at the screen again. The cursor blinked at me, mocking my obsolescence. "You are too old, Silas," it seemed to say. "The world has moved on. You cannot save her." I checked my watch. 20 minutes gone. Chase would be finishing his speech. He would be checking his phone soon. I needed help. I needed someone who spoke this language. Someone who knew the dark alleys of the internet as well as I knew the jungle. And then I remembered him. Dante. Not the rich Dante from the fundraiser, but the kid from my old neighborhood. The skinny boy with the thick glasses who used to sit on my front porch using my Wi-Fi because his mother could not afford internet. I remembered the day the police came for him when he was 16. They said he had hacked into the school district's mainframe to change grades for the football team. They were going to throw the book at him. I was the one who went down to the station. I was the one who talked to the sergeant, a man I had served with in the reserves. I told him the kid had a gift and that sending him to juvenile detention would only make him a criminal. I got him released into my custody. I made him paint my fence and fix my truck. And in exchange, I bought him his first real computer server and told him to use his powers for good. That was 10 years ago. Dante was a man now, a ghost in the machine. He lived off the grid doing jobs that people did not talk about. I pulled out my burner phone. I hesitated. Dragging him into this was dangerous. Chase was powerful. If this went wrong, we could both end up in prison or worse. But then I thought of Nia. I thought of the blood in the sink. I thought of the hospice van coming tomorrow morning. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. "Yeah," a voice answered, deep and guarded. "Dante, it's Silas." The line went silent for a moment. Then the voice softened just a fraction. "Pops, I haven't heard from you since the diagnosis." "You okay?" "I am not okay, Dante. I am inside a house in the suburbs. I am staring at a server with military-grade encryption, and I have about 15 minutes before a very bad man comes home to kill me." I heard the sound of a chair scraping and keys clacking on the other end. "Talk to me, Pops. What are we looking at? I need you to break a code, Dante. I need you to find a video file. I think my son-in-law tried to murder my daughter, and the proof is locked in this box." There was a pause. Then Dante's voice came back sharp and focused. "Plug your phone into the USB port on the terminal. Tether the connection. Give me a bridge and I will burn his castle down." I found the cable. I plugged it in. The screen flickered. "I am in," Dante said. "Whoa. This guy has layers. This isn't just a home server, Pops. This is a vault. Give me 60 seconds to bypass the firewall." I watched the screen. Lines of code began to cascade down the monitor like green rain. It was beautiful and terrifying. Suddenly the house lights flickered. "What was that?" I asked. "He has a silent alarm linked to the failed password attempts," Dante said quickly. "He just got a notification. He knows someone is in the system." My heart hammered against my ribs. "How much time, Dante?" "He is probably calling the police right now, or private security. You need to get out, Pops." "Not without the files," I said. "I am not leaving without her." "I can't decrypt it that fast," Dante shouted. "Grab the drive in slot 3, the one with the red light. That is the master backup. Rip it out if you have to. I will crack it at my place. But you need to run." Now I dropped the phone. I reached for the server rack. I did not have a screwdriver. I grabbed the handle of the drive tray and braced my feet against the desk. I pulled with everything I had. The metal groaned, my chest burned. I summoned every ounce of strength left in my dying body. With a screech of tearing metal, the drive popped loose. I shoved it under my jacket. I grabbed my phone. I ran. I ran up the stairs, ignoring the burning in my lungs. I ran through the pristine hallway. As I reached the back door, I heard the sound of tires screeching in the driveway. Chase was home, and he was not alone. I drove like a madman through the city streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The hard drive was tucked inside my jacket, burning against my chest like a brand. I ran 3 red lights. I did not care. The only thing that mattered was getting to Dante's safe house before Chase's private security team tracked my license plate. My lungs were screaming in protest, the fluid rattling deep in my chest with every breath, but the adrenaline was the only medicine keeping me upright. Dante lived in the basement of an abandoned textile factory in the industrial district. It was the kind of place that did not exist on Google Maps. I pulled my truck behind a pile of rusted shipping containers and killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I coughed into my sleeve, and when I pulled it away, there was more blood. I wiped it off and stepped out into the freezing wind. Dante was waiting for me at the heavy steel door. He looked different than the skinny kid I remembered. He was grown now, with tattoos climbing up his neck and eyes that had seen too much screen time and not enough sunlight. He did not say a word. He just ushered me inside and bolted the door behind us. The room was a cave of electronics. Monitors were stacked floor-to-ceiling cables running like vines across the concrete floor. The only light came from the blue glow of the screens. It smelled of ozone and stale coffee. "Give it to me," Dante said, extending his hand. I pulled the drive from my jacket. It felt heavy. He took it and plugged it into a docking station that looked like it had been built from spare parts of a spaceship. He sat down and his fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard. The sound was like heavy rain on a tin roof. I stood behind him, watching the lines of code scroll past. I did not understand the language of the machine, but I understood the tension in the room. "This encryption is nasty," Dante muttered without looking up. "AES 256-bit. But he got lazy with the salt. He reused a key from his corporate login. Classic narcissist. He thinks he is too smart to get caught." "How long?" I asked, my voice raspy. Dante hit the enter key with a flourish. "Done." The screen flashed green. A file directory popped up. My heart hammered against my ribs. I expected to see financial records. I expected to see emails to a mistress or offshore bank accounts. but there was only one folder. It was named Discipline. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Discipline. It was a word fathers used for children, a word the army used for soldiers. It was not a word a husband used for a wife. Open it, I said. Dante double-clicked. The folder opened, revealing dozens of video files. They were dated. The most recent one was from 3 nights ago, the night Nia ended up in the coma. Dante looked at me. His face was pale in the monitor light. Do you want me to play it, Pops? Play it. He clicked the file. A media player opened. The footage was shaky at first, then it stabilized. It was a point-of-view shot. The camera was mounted on someone's head or chest. I could see hands, manicured hands with a gold wedding band and a heavy Rolex. Chase's hands. The camera moved through the hallway of my daughter's house. I heard Chase's voice, but it was different. It was calm. Terrifyingly calm. You know the rules, Nia, his voice said through the speakers. We talked about this. When we are with the partners, you do not correct me. You do not interrupt me. You smile and you pour the wine. The camera turned into the kitchen. Nia was standing there. She was wearing her pajamas. She looked terrified. She was backing away, holding her hands up. Chase, please, she begged. Her voice was shaking. I didn't mean to. I just thought you got the figures wrong. You thought, Chase mocked, stepping closer. The camera loomed over her. You are not paid to think, Nia. You are paid to look good. You are paid to be the trophy. Tonight you made me look weak. You made me look like I cannot control my own household. Chase, please stop, she cried, backing into the counter. I warned you, Chase said. This is for the brotherhood. This is how we maintain order. The brotherhood. The word hung in the air like poison. Then the violence started. I watched in horror as my son-in-law raised his hand. I saw the fist connect with my daughter's face. The camera did not look away. He did not turn it off. He wanted to see it. He wanted to record it. Nia fell to the floor. The camera looked down at her. She was crying, blood running from her nose. Get up, Chase commanded. Take it like a woman. He kicked her. I saw his expensive Italian leather shoe slam into her ribs. I heard the crack. It was the sound of a bone breaking. It was the sound of my heart shattering. I watched him grab her by the hair and drag her toward the stairs. She was screaming, but he was lecturing her. He was giving a speech about respect and hierarchy while he beat the life out of her. See this, guys, he said, addressing the camera directly. This is what happens when the asset forgets its place. You have to reset the factory settings. You have to show them who is the architect of their reality. He threw her down the stairs. The camera watched her tumble. Her body hit the steps with sickening thuds. She landed at the bottom and did not move. Chase walked slowly down the stairs. He stood over her unconscious body. He checked his watch. Then he leaned down and whispered, "Lesson learned." The video ended. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the cooling fans in the servers. I was holding a glass of water Dante had given me. I did not remember picking it up. My hand tightened. The glass exploded. Shards of glass drove into my palm. Water and blood mixed on the concrete floor, dripping from my clenched fist. I did not feel the pain. I felt nothing but a black, bottomless hole where my soul used to be. I stood up. I turned toward the door. Where are you going? Dante asked. His voice was low and steady. I am going to kill him, I said. My voice did not sound like my own. It sounded like grinding stones. I am going to drive to that hospital. I am going to walk into that room, and I am going to tear his throat out with my bare hands. I reached for the door handle. My blood was boiling. I was back in the jungle. I was a soldier again. I knew how to kill a man. I knew a dozen ways to end a life in under 10 seconds. Chase was a soft man, a weak man. He would break like a twig. Dante stepped in front of the door. He blocked my path. Move, Dante, I warned him. You have Dante, No, Dante said. I grabbed him by the collar. I was 70 years old and dying of lung disease, but rage gave me the strength of 10 men. I shoved him against the steel door. He beat my baby girl, I roared. He filmed it. He laughed about it. He is going to unplug her tomorrow morning. I am not going to let him live another hour. Think, Silas, Dante shouted back. He did not fight me. He just looked me in the eye. Think about Nia. I froze. If you kill him tonight, Dante said, talking fast, you go to prison for the rest of your short life. You die in a cell. And Nia, she dies in that hospice, because if Chase is murdered, his assets get frozen. The insurance company investigates. The money stops. There is no one to pay for her care, no one to fight for her. I loosened my grip on his collar. And he wins. Dante continued. If you kill him, he becomes a victim. The grieving husband murdered by the crazy father-in-law. The media will make him a saint. He will never be exposed for what he really is. That video will never be seen. He will die a hero, and you will die a monster. I stepped back. My breath was coming in ragged gasps. The blood from my hand dripped onto the floor. Then what I whispered. What do we do? He is going to kill her, Dante. No, he isn't, Dante said. He walked back to the computer. He pulled up the video file again, but this time he opened a web browser. He navigated to a dark web forum, the one Chase had mentioned, the Brotherhood. We don't kill him with a gun, Dante said. We kill him with the truth. We destroy his life. We destroy his reputation. We make sure that by the time the sun comes up tomorrow, he wishes he was dead. Dante looked at me. His eyes were cold and calculating. We are going to stream this video everywhere, Pops. Not just to the police, to his business partners, to the news stations, to every screen in Times Square if I can hack it. We are going to strip him naked in front of the world. He pointed to the screen where Chase was bragging about discipline. He wanted an audience, Dante said. Let's give him one. I looked at my bleeding hand. I looked at the face of the man who hurt my daughter. Dante was right. Death was too easy. Death was a release. I did not want Chase to have peace. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to lose everything he had ever built, everything he had ever stolen. I sat down next to Dante. I wrapped a rag around my hand. Do it, I said. Burn him down. Dante cracked his knuckles and began to type. The war was no longer physical. It was digital, and we were about to drop the bomb. The television in the waiting room was mounted high on the wall, shielded by a layer of plexiglass. It was tuned to the local news channel and the volume was low, but I could hear every word. I could hear every lie. On the screen, my son-in-law Chase was sitting in a plush armchair across from a smiling news anchor. He looked impeccable. His suit was a midnight blue, tailored to fit his athletic frame. His hair was perfectly styled. He did not look like a man whose wife was in a coma. He looked like a visionary. He looked like the future. The banner at the bottom of the screen read, Tech Mogul Launches Revolutionary App to Protect Families. I sat there in my stained work clothes, my hand wrapped in a bloody rag clutching a cup of cold coffee. I watched the man who beat my daughter tell the world how much he cared about safety. It is called Safe Home, Chase said to the camera. His voice was smooth like expensive chocolate. After what happened to my wife, he paused and looked down. It was a perfect dramatic pause. He wiped an imaginary tear from his eye. After the tragedy that befell Nia, I realized that the current security systems are not enough. We need artificial intelligence. We need a system that learns the patterns of a household. A system that can detect a threat before it even enters the door. I gripped the coffee cup so hard the styrofoam cracked. The irony was so thick it tasted like bile in my throat. He was selling a system to protect women from intruders while the real monster was sleeping in their bed. He was capitalizing on his own crime. He was turning my daughter's pain into a marketing campaign. The anchor woman leaned forward, looking at him with adoration. "You are so brave, Chase," she said, "to channel your grief into something that will save lives. You are truly an inspiration." Chase smiled. It was a humble smile, a practiced smile. I am just a husband who wants to make sure no other family has to go through this hell. I stood up. I could not watch anymore. I walked over to the window and looked out at the parking lot. It was raining, a cold, gray drizzle that matched the ache in my lungs. My chest felt heavy, like I was carrying a sack of wet cement. The doctor had told me earlier that my oxygen levels were dropping. He said I should be admitted. He said I was dying. I told him I had work to do. I heard the sound of expensive leather shoes on the linoleum floor behind me. I did not turn around. I knew that walk. It was the confident stride of a man who owns the world. "Turn it off," Chase's voice said. I turned slowly. He was standing there in the flesh, wearing the same suit I had just seen on TV. He must have come straight from the studio. He smelled of hairspray and victory. He was holding a remote control. He pointed it at the TV, and the screen went black. My daughter's face disappeared. "You look terrible, Silas," he said, looking me up and down. You smell like a mechanic's shop and desperation. It is not a good look for the grieving father. He walked closer, checking his reflection in the darkened window glass. I came to check on her, he said, but mostly I came to check on you. The nurses tell me you have been sleeping in the chair. You are making people uncomfortable, Silas. You are scaring the other families. I looked at him. I looked at the hollow beneath his throat where I wanted to bury my thumbs. I thought about the video on the hard drive. I thought about the sound of Nia's bones cracking. Dante's voice echoed in my head. Let the world kill him. Wait for the launch. I forced my hands to relax. I forced my shoulders to slump. I needed him to think I was broken. I needed him to think I was defeated. She is my daughter, Chase, I said. My voice was raspy and weak. It did not take much acting. I was weak. I just want to be here when she goes. Chase sighed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver money clip. He peeled off a bill. It was a crisp $100 note. Benjamin Franklin looked up at me, judging me. Chase flicked the bill at me. It fluttered through the air and landed on the dirty floor between my boots. Here, he said. That is for a taxi to the airport, or a bus, whatever you people take. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. Launch day is tomorrow, Silas, the biggest day of my career. I have investors coming from Tokyo and London. I have the mayor coming to cut the ribbon. I do not want you here. I do not want your sad face and your poverty distracting from my moment. He pointed a manicured finger at my chest. Go back to your farm. Die there. Do us both a favor. If I see you here tomorrow, I will have security remove you for trespassing, and then I will call the insurance company and tell them to pull the plug on Nia immediately. Do you understand me? I looked down at the money. It was the ultimate insult. He was buying my disappearance with pocket change. He thought everyone had a price. He thought he could control every variable in his life with money and intimidation. I bent down. My knees cracked. I reached out and picked up the bill. The paper felt cold. I stood up and looked him in the eye. I let a small tremor enter my hand. I let my eyes fill with tears of humiliation. You win, Chase, I whispered. I cannot fight you. I have no money. I have no power. I folded the bill and put it in my pocket. I will go, I said. I will pack my things. Just, please don't hurt her anymore. Chase laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time, a laugh of relief. He patted my cheek. It was a degrading gesture like petting a dog that you are about to euthanize. Smart choice, old man, he said. Now get out of my sight. He turned and walked toward Nia's room. He did not look back. He walked with the lightness of a man who has just discarded a heavy burden. I watched him go. And as soon as he disappeared around the corner, the tremor in my hand stopped. The tears in my eyes dried up. I reached into my pocket and touched the $100 bill. I would keep it. I would frame it. It would be the first dollar of my new fortune, the fortune I would build from the ashes of his empire. I walked to the elevator. I pushed the button for the lobby. Chase thought he had cleared the board. He thought he had removed the only obstacle in his path. He was so blinded by his own arrogance that he did not see the trap I had laid. He was launching Safe Home tomorrow. He was going to stand on a stage in front of the world and demonstrate his technology. He was going to show everyone how his system could detect a threat. Well, I was going to give him a demonstration he would never forget. I walked out of the hospital into the rain. A black sedan was waiting at the curb. The window rolled down. It was Dante. Did he buy it? Dante asked. I got in the car. I pulled the seatbelt across my chest. He thinks I am on a bus to nowhere, I said. Dante smiled, a cold, sharp smile. Good. Because the invitations for the launch party just leaked online. I got us front row seats. I looked at the hospital one last time. Sleep well. Chase, I said to the rain, enjoy your last night as a free man. Because tomorrow, the architect is coming to inspect your foundation, and I am going to bring the whole house down. We drove away into the gray city, leaving the hospital behind. But I was not leaving Nia. I was going to get the weapons I needed to save her. The drive to Dante's warehouse was silent. I used the time to breathe, to focus. In the army, they taught us that the most dangerous moment is right before the ambush. You have to be still. You have to be patient. Chase was the enemy, but he was also the target. And tomorrow at noon, he was going to walk into the kill zone. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I slept. I dreamed of a bridge collapsing, I dreamed of steel twisting and concrete crumbling, and in the center of the dust cloud I saw Chase falling. I woke up when the car stopped. We were back at the warehouse. Dante turned to me. "Are you ready, Silas?" he asked. I touched the pocket where the money was. "I have been ready for 40 years, I said. We walked into the darkness of the warehouse where the servers were humming, waiting to unleash the truth. The countdown had begun. Dante paced back and forth in the cramped server room, his shadow dancing against the concrete walls. He was holding a can of energy drink in one hand and a tablet in the other. He looked like a general before a battle, but his army was just me. A dying old man with a cough that tasted like rusted iron. "We have a problem," Pops, Dante said, stopping in front of the monitors. "I have been running simulations. If we upload the video to YouTube or Twitter, Chase's algorithm will flag it in seconds. He owns a piece of the content moderation software they use. It will be scrubbed before it gets 100 views. And if we send it to the news stations, his lawyers will hit them with an injunction before they can air a single frame." I sat on a metal folding chair, wiping the sweat from my forehead. The pain in my chest was a constant dull roar now, like a heavy engine idling in neutral. "So we are blocked?" I asked. "Digitally, yes," Dante said. "He has built a fortress around his reputation. We cannot breach the firewall from the outside." I looked at the blueprint of the convention center displayed on the main screen. It was a massive glass and steel structure downtown, the venue for the Safe Home launch. "If we cannot hit him from the outside," I said, my voice raspy, "we have to hit him from the inside." Dante looked at me. "What do you mean?" I pointed a shaking finger at the schematic, specifically at the audio-visual control booth located on the mezzanine level overlooking the main stage. "Every presentation needs a source," I said. "Chase is going to be standing on that stage with a massive LED screen behind him. That screen is fed by a hard line from this booth. If we can plug directly into the system, we bypass the internet. We bypass the sensors. We bypass his lawyers." Dante's eyes widened. He zoomed in on the map. "You want to hijack the live feed?" I nodded. "I want to replace his corporate promo video with the truth. I want to put Nia's bruised face on a screen 60 feet tall while he is standing right in front of it. I want him to look over his shoulder and see his own crime staring back at him." Dante started typing furiously. "That could work. If I can give you a payload drive, a USB stick with a nasty little script on it, you just need to plug it into the main media server. The script will override the playlist and lock the system. They won't be able to turn it off without cutting the power to the whole building." He paused and looked at me. His expression darkened. "But there is a catch, Pops. That booth is in the secure zone. Chase has hired Blackwater types for security. Private military contractors. They will have metal detectors, ID checkpoints, and they will be watching every door. You cannot just walk in there." I stood up slowly. My joints popped. I walked over to a pile of old clothes Dante kept in the corner for disguises. I pulled out a gray jumpsuit. It was stained with oil and grease. It looked exactly like the uniform I used to wear at the steel mill 30 years ago. I picked up a name tag that read maintenance. "They are looking for a hacker, Dante," I said. "They are looking for a disgruntled employee or a corporate spy. They are looking for someone who matters." I held up the jumpsuit. "They are not looking for a janitor." Dante looked at me with doubt. "You are sick, Pops. You can barely breathe. If you get caught..." I cut him off. "If I get caught, I die. If I stay here, I die. At least this way, I die on my feet." We spent the next 3 hours prepping. Dante loaded the video onto a flash drive that looked like a standard Bic lighter. He showed me exactly which port on the server tower I needed to hit. He showed me the sequence. Plug it in, wait for the green light, walk away. It sounded simple. But I knew nothing in war is ever simple. I went to the bathroom to change. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror. I looked old, older than 70. The sickness had hollowed out my cheeks and turned my skin a shade of gray. I did not need makeup to look like a tired, invisible old man. I was him. I shaved off my white beard, leaving just a stubble. I put on the jumpsuit. It smelled of mildew, but that was perfect. I found a pair of thick glasses in Dante's drawer, the kind that magnified my eyes and made me look harmless. When I walked out, Dante did not say a word. He just handed me the lighter. "Good luck, soldier," he said softly. I took a cab to the convention center. It was raining again. The city seemed to be weeping for my daughter. I got out 2 blocks away and walked to the service entrance. The building was surrounded. Black SUVs were parked in rows. Men in earpieces and tactical suits stood at every corner. They looked professional. They scanned the crowd looking for threats. I hunched my shoulders. I let my limp become more pronounced. I grabbed a trash bag from a dumpster nearby and threw it over my shoulder. I walked right up to the service gate. A guard stepped in front of me. He was huge, a wall of muscle and Kevlar. He held up a hand. "Hold it," he barked. "Access is restricted. Event staff only." I looked up at him, squinting through the thick glasses. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I made my hands shake. "Delivery," I mumbled, pointing at the bag. Supervisor said, "Trash. Back door." The guard looked at me, but he did not really see me. He saw a uniform. He saw gray hair. He saw a broken-down old man who cleaned up other people's messes. He did not see a combat engineer. He did not see a father on a mission. He rolled his eyes and keyed his radio. "Command. I got a janitor at the south gate. Looks like he is lost. Clear him," a voice crackled back. "We need the bins emptied before the VIPs arrive." "Just search the bag." The guard snatched the bag from my shoulder. He looked inside. "Just trash." He patted me down quickly. His hands brushed past the lighter in my pocket. He didn't even pause. Why would he? It was just a lighter. "Go ahead," he grunted, stepping aside. "Keep out of sight. Mr. Chase wants the hallways clear." "Thank you, sir," I wheezed. "God bless you, sir." I shuffled past him. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I kept my pace slow. Shuffle. Cough. Look down. I was in. The interior of the convention center was a different world. The lobby was transformed into a shrine to Chase. Massive banners hung from the ceiling bearing his smiling face and the slogan, "Safe home protection you can trust." Waiters in tuxedos were setting up champagne towers. Technicians were testing the lights, turning the hall into a kaleidoscope of blue and silver. It was beautiful. It was expensive. It was a lie built on my daughter's bones. I found a utility closet and grabbed a mop and a bucket. This was my passport. A man walking with a purpose is suspicious. A man pushing a mop is part of the furniture. I navigated the corridors, moving toward the mezzanine. The pain in my lungs was getting worse. Every breath was a struggle against the fluid filling my chest. I coughed into my sleeve and saw fresh blood. I swallowed it down. Not yet. I could not collapse yet. I reached the stairs leading to the control booth. A sign read, "Restricted area authorized tech personnel only." 2 more guards stood at the top of the stairs. They were talking, laughing about something one of them had seen on TV. I started mopping the stairs. I moved slowly, working my way up 1 step at a time. Dip the mop, swirl the water, step up. "Hey, Pops," one of the guards called out. "You can't be up here. Tech crew only." I stopped and looked up. I wiped my forehead with a dirty rag. "Spill on the landing," I said, pointing vaguely upward. Supervisor said coffee spill. "Sticky. Boss man will slip." The guards looked at each other. They didn't want to deal with a spill. They didn't want to deal with a senile janitor. "Make it quick," the guard said, "and stay quiet. They are doing a sound check." I nodded and continued up. My legs were burning. The bucket felt like it weighed a ton. I reached the landing and pushed past them, keeping my head down. I was 10 feet from the door of the control booth. Through the glass window I could see the bank of servers. I could see the technicians wearing headsets staring at their screens. I pushed the door open. The cool air of the server room hit my face. A young technician spun around in his chair. "Hey, who let you in here?" I dragged the bucket in and let the door close behind me. "Trash," I mumbled, holding up a wastebasket I had grabbed from the hall. "Emptying trash." The tech sighed and turned back to his screen. "Just don't touch anything. We go live in 20 minutes. I moved behind him. I scanned the rack. There it was, the main media server, the blinking blue light that marked the input port. I reached into my pocket and gripped the lighter. My hand was shaking uncontrollably now. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving only the sickness and the pain. I had to be precise. One wrong move and they would see me. One fumble and the drive would drop. I took a deep breath, inhaling the ozone and the cold air. "I am here, Nia," I thought. "Daddy is here." I leaned down, pretending to tie my shoe right next to the server tower. The technician was busy typing commands for the lighting cue. He did not look down. I pulled the lighter out. I uncapped it. I reached out with my trembling hand and guided it toward the USB port. The metal clicked against the casing. The technician stiffened. What was that? He started to turn his chair. I jammed the drive in. The light on the stick flashed from red to green. Payload delivered. I stood up quickly, too quickly. The room spun. Black spots danced in my vision. Nothing, son, I said, leaning on my mop handle, just my old knees cracking. The technician looked at me suspiciously. He looked at the server. He did not see the tiny drive tucked into the back port. He looked back at me. Get out, he said. Now. I nodded. I am going. Good luck with the show. I walked out of the booth. I walked past the guards. I walked down the stairs. I did not stop until I reached the balcony overlooking the main floor. I found a dark corner behind a velvet curtain and sat down on the floor. I could not walk another step. I pulled out my phone and texted Dante. The fuse is lit. Below me, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. The dramatic music swelled. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice announced over the speakers, please welcome the visionary behind Safe Home, Mr. Chase Miller. The spotlight hit the stage. Chase walked out waving to the applause. He looked like a king. I sat in the darkness, clutching my chest, listening to the fluid rattle in my lungs. Smile while you can, son, I whispered. Because the show is about to get real interesting. I closed my eyes and waited for the explosion. I huddled in the shadows behind a rack of amplifiers, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The tiny USB drive was in place. The red light had turned to green, which meant Dante's code was already burrowing its way into the system like a termite into rotten wood. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt the thrill of the mission. But all I felt was the rising tide in my chest. It started as a tickle in the back of my throat, a small, insignificant irritation that I tried to swallow away. But you cannot negotiate with a failing body. The tickle became a scratch, and the scratch became a spasm. I clamped my hand over my mouth, pressing my lips into the rough fabric of my maintenance glove. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to force the cough back down, trying to will my lungs to behave for just 5 more minutes. But the pressure was too great. It was like trying to hold back a dam with a piece of plywood. My chest convulsed. A wet, violent cough exploded from my throat. It was muffled by my glove, but in the quiet hum of the control booth, it sounded like a gunshot. The young technician in the chair spun around, his headset slid off one ear. "Who is there?" he called out. I froze. I stayed crouched behind the black road cases, my knees screaming in protest. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. The technician stood up. He walked toward the shadows where I was hiding. I gripped the handle of my mop bucket, preparing to... Well, I did not know what I was going to do. I was not going to hit a kid. I was not a monster. Suddenly, the door to the booth hissed open. "Sit down, Lewis," a deep voice commanded. The technician stopped and turned. "Oh, Mr. Vargas." I thought I heard something back there. I peered through the gap between the cases. Standing in the doorway was the head of security. Vargas. I recognized him from the dossiers Dante had pulled up. Ex-military, dishonorable discharge for excessive force. He was a shark in a cheap suit, and right now he was sniffing the water. "Focus on the board." Luis Vargas said, his eyes scanning the room. "We go live in 10 minutes. I don't want you jumping at shadows." The technician sat back down, muttering an apology. But Vargas did not leave. He stood there, his head tilted to the side, listening. He took a slow step into the room. I pressed myself tighter into the corner. My chest was burning. The cough was building again, a second wave crashing against the shore. I could feel the fluid bubbling up. I couldn't hold it. I coughed again, softer this time, but wet, horribly wet. Vargas spun toward my hiding spot. His hand went instantly to the holster inside his jacket. "Who is back there?" he barked. "Come out. Now." I had no choice. I could not fight him. I was a 70-year-old man with stage 4 cancer. He would snap me in half before I could throw a punch. I had to play the role. I had to be the harmless, invisible janitor. I used the mop handle to pull myself up. I let my shoulders slump. I let my mouth hang open in a confused, senile gape. "Just me, sir," I wheezed. My voice was thick with phlegm. "Just cleaning the spills, sir." I stepped out of the shadows, pushing the yellow bucket in front of me like a shield. Vargas stared at me. His eyes were cold, hard flint. He looked at my jumpsuit. He looked at my name tag. Then he looked at the floor where I had been crouching. His eyes narrowed. "What is that?" he asked, pointing. I looked down. On the pristine, black, anti-static floor there was a splatter. Bright red. Fresh blood. My blood. It shone under the LED lights like a beacon. I tried to cover it with my boot, but I was too slow. Vargas stepped forward, pushing the technician's chair out of the way. He knelt down and touched the spot with a gloved finger. He looked at the red stain on the tip of his glove. Then he looked up at me. "You are sick, old man," he said. "Just a nosebleed, sir." I lied. Dry air. Very dry. Vargas stood up slowly. He did not buy it. I could see the gears turning in his head. A janitor in a restricted zone. A janitor who coughs blood. A janitor who looks familiar. He took a step closer to me. He reached out and grabbed my chin, tilting my face up to the light. I tried to pull away, but his grip was like iron. He peered through my thick glasses. "I know you," he whispered. "I saw your picture." My blood ran cold. He had seen the briefing. Chase must have shown them my photo. The crazy father-in-law. The threat. Vargas smiled a cruel, predatory smile. "You are the father, the one who wants to ruin the party." He reached for his radio with his other hand. "Command, this is Vargas. I have an intruder in the audio-visual booth. Sector 4, send backup, and tell Mr. Chase I have a present for him." This was it. The mission was over. I was going to be arrested. The drive would be found. Nia would die alone. No. I was an engineer. I solved problems. And right now, Vargas was the problem. I looked at the environment. The server rack to my left. The mop bucket in front of me. The heavy-duty power strip on the floor powering the entire console. I did not have a weapon, but I had water, and I had electricity. As Vargas keyed his radio, I kicked the bucket. It was not a clumsy stumble. It was a calculated strike. The yellow bucket tipped over, sending 2 gallons of soapy gray water cascading across the floor. "Hey," Vargas shouted, jumping back. The water moved fast. It washed over his expensive shoes. It washed over the bloodstain. And it washed right into the open sockets of the main power strip. I squeezed my eyes shut and turned away. The sound was deafening. A crack like a whip, followed by the angry buzz of arcing electricity. Sparks showered the room like fireworks. The technician screamed and threw himself away from the console. The lights in the booth flickered and died. Then the emergency klaxons began to wail. "Fire!" Vargas yelled, backing away from the smoking outlet. "The fire suppression system is going to blow. Get out." Smoke began to fill the small room. Acrid, biting smoke that smelled of melting plastic. In the chaos, Vargas lost his grip on me. He was too busy trying to keep the technician from panicking. I did not wait for an invitation. I dropped the mop and ran. I ran out of the booth and into the hallway. The emergency lights were flashing, strobing red against the walls. People were coming out of doors looking confused. Guards were running toward the booth, shouting into their radios. I blended into the confusion. I hunched my back and shuffled faster, keeping my head down. "Hey, you," a guard shouted as I passed. "Get to the exit." "Yes, sir." I coughed. "Going now, sir." I made it to the stairwell. I grabbed the railing and hauled myself down the steps. My lungs were on fire. Every breath was a knife. I was drowning in my own body. I reached the ground floor. The service exit was just ahead. I could see the gray light of the rainy afternoon spilling through the open loading dock doors. Freedom. I pushed myself harder. My hand fumbled in my pocket for my pill bottle. The high-strength painkillers the doctor had given me. I needed one. I needed to numb the fire in my chest so I could keep moving. I pulled the bottle out. My hands were shaking so badly. I tried to pop the cap while I ran. I stumbled over a cable protector on the floor. I didn't fall, but I jerked forward. The orange plastic bottle slipped from my sweat-slicked fingers. It hit the concrete floor. It skittered away, sliding under a stack of pallets near the door. I stopped. I looked back. I needed those pills. They were the only thing keeping me standing. But I heard heavy boots on the stairs behind me. I heard Vargas's voice shouting orders. I cannot stop. I made a choice. I left the medicine. I left my relief. I burst out into the alleyway. The cold rain hit my face, mixing with the sweat and the grime. I did not look back. I limped toward the street where Dante was waiting. I had escaped. The virus was planted. The trap was set. But back in that hallway under a wooden pallet lay a bright orange bottle, and on the label printed in clear black letters was my name, Booker Lewis, prescription number 49201. I had left my calling card, and it was only a matter of time before Vargas found it. I climbed into Dante's car and collapsed against the seat. "Did you do it?" Dante asked, looking at my pale face. I nodded, closing my eyes. "It is done." Dante put the car in gear. "You look like you walked through hell, Pops." I chuckled a wet, gurgling sound. "I did, son," I whispered, and I left the door open behind me. As we drove away, I watched the convention center in the rearview mirror. The lights were still on. The party was still happening. Chase was still inside, smiling, shaking hands, unaware that his kingdom was built on a landmine and I had just pulled the pin. But as the pain in my chest grew sharper, I knew that the clock was ticking for both of us. He had hours until his ruin. I had hours until my collapse. It was going to be a photo finish. I stumbled into a place called the Iron Horse, a dive bar tucked away in the shadow of the glistening convention center. It was the kind of place where the floor was sticky with spilled beer, and the air smelled of stale cigarette smoke and regrets. It was perfect. It was the only place in this city where a man in a dirty maintenance jumpsuit could sit in a dark corner and disappear. My chest was a furnace. I had left my pain medication on the floor of the convention center hallway, and now my body was making me pay the price. Every breath was a jagged shard of glass tearing through my lungs. I ordered a double shot of the cheapest whiskey they had. I did not drink it for the taste. I drank it because I needed to numb the fire inside me just enough to keep my hands steady for one more hour. Above the bar, mounted on a wall that had not seen a fresh coat of paint in 20 years, was a flat-screen television. It was tuned to the national broadcast. The volume was turned up, and for once the regulars at the bar were not talking about football or horse racing. They were watching the show. They were watching him. The camera swept across the interior of the convention hall. It was a sea of faces. Thousands of people. Tech journalists in trendy glasses, investors in expensive suits, and ordinary citizens who had bought tickets just to be close to the greatness of Chase Miller. The stage was a masterpiece of minimalist design. A massive black floor, a single spotlight, and behind it a screen that stretched 60 feet high and 100 feet wide. The lights in the hall dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd, the kind of silence usually reserved for church services or funerals. Then the music started, a swelling orchestral piece that was designed to tug at the heartstrings. It built to a crescendo, and then he walked out. Chase. He looked like a god descending from Olympus. He walked to the center of the stage, bathed in a pool of white light. He stopped and looked out at the audience. He did not smile. He looked humble. He looked burdened. He looked like the weight of the world was resting on his tailored shoulders. The applause was deafening. I watched the patrons in the bar, nodding along. "He is a good man," the bartender said, wiping a glass with a dirty rag. "Dealing with all that tragedy and still working to save lives. That is a real man right there." I gripped my whiskey glass so hard I thought it would shatter. If only they knew. If only they could see the blood on his hands, the same hands that were currently waving to the crowd. Chase raised a hand, and the applause died down instantly. He had them in the palm of his hand. He was the conductor, and they were his orchestra. "Thank you," he said softly into the microphone. His voice was cracked with emotion. "A perfect performance. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support during the darkest days of my life." He paused and looked down at his shoes. He took a deep breath as if gathering his strength. "We all think our homes are our castles," he continued. "We think that once we lock the door, we are safe. We think that the monsters are outside. But the truth is the world has changed. The threats are smarter, they are faster, and sometimes they strike when we are most vulnerable." He turned and pointed to the massive screen behind him. A photo appeared. It was Nia. But it was not the Nia I saw in the hospital bed. It was not the Nia with the swollen face and the broken ribs. It was a photo from 3 years ago taken on a beach in Maui. She was smiling, her hair blowing in the wind, looking radiant and happy. My daughter, my beautiful baby girl, used as a prop, used as a marketing tool to sell software. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I coughed and it turned into a hacking fit that drew stares from the other drinkers. I waved them off and downed the rest of the whiskey. The burn of the alcohol fought the burn of the cancer. "This is my wife Nia Chase," said his voice trembling. "She is the love of my life. And 3 nights ago she was taken from me. Not by death, but by a senseless act of violence. An intruder entered our home, a sanctuary that I thought was secure. And in a matter of minutes my world was destroyed." "Liar," I whispered to the empty glass. "You are the intruder." The camera zoomed in on Chase's face. A single tear rolled down his cheek. It was masterful. Hollywood actors spent years trying to perfect that single tear. Chase did it effortlessly because he was a sociopath. He did not feel grief. He felt self-pity. He felt like the victim because his property had been damaged. I blamed myself, Chase said. I am a tech CEO. I build security systems. How could I fail to protect my own family? I spent the last 3 nights sitting by her hospital bed, holding her hand, praying for a miracle. And in those long, dark hours, I had a revelation. He began to pace the stage, his energy building. Sensors on windows are not enough. Motion detectors are not enough. We need intelligence. We need a system that doesn't just see movement, but understands intent. We need a system that knows the difference between a delivery man and a predator. He stopped and spread his arms wide. That is why I created Safe Home. It is not just an alarm. It is a guardian. It uses military-grade behavioral analysis to scan anyone who approaches your door. It checks criminal databases in real time. It analyzes micro-expressions to detect aggression. It is the most advanced home protection system ever built. I looked at my phone. A text message from Dante popped up. I am monitoring the feed. The USB is active. The script is dormant but ready. We have total control of the audio and visual output. Just say the word pops. I looked back at the screen. Chase was now demonstrating the app on a giant projected phone screen. Let me show you how it works, he said. He tapped an icon. The screen showed a simulation of a house. Green lines scanned the perimeter. Imagine if I had this 3 nights ago, Chase said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Imagine if the system had warned me. Imagine if it had locked the doors and alerted the police before that monster could lay a hand on her. The bartender shook his head. Tragic. Just tragic. I could not take it anymore. Not take it. The hypocrisy was physically painful. He was using the crime he committed to sell the solution that would not have stopped him. He was the fox selling insurance to the hen house. I typed a reply to Dante. My fingers were thick and clumsy, but I managed to hit the keys. Is the audio synced? Yes, Dante replied instantly. We override the main mix. His mic will be cut. The video audio will take over. Do it. I typed. I hesitated for a second. My thumb hovered over the send button. I knew that once I did this, there was no going back. Chase would be destroyed, but so would my anonymity. Vargas would know exactly who planted that drive. The police would know. I would probably spend my final days in a jail cell or a hospital ward under arrest. But then I looked at Nia's smiling face on the screen. I remembered the sound of her laughter when she was a little girl. I remembered how she used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. I remembered the promise I made to her mother. Protect her, Booker. Protect our girl. I had failed to protect her from him. But I could protect her memory. I could protect her dignity. Chase was winding up for his big finish. I am doing this for Nia, he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. I am doing this so that her suffering was not in vain. I am doing this so that no husband ever has to feel the pain I feel right now. I pressed send. Now. On the television screen, Chase froze. He looked confused. The massive image of Nia on the beach flickered. It distorted like a digital glitch. The audience murmured. Chase tapped his earpiece. Technical difficulties, he joked, trying to keep his cool. It seems even the best technology has gremlins. But it was not a gremlin. The screen went black for a heartbeat. The entire convention center plunged into darkness. The only light came from the thousands of cell phone screens in the audience. Then a sound tore through the silence. It was not orchestral music. It was not Chase's smooth voice. It was a thud, a sickening wet thud, the sound of a fist hitting flesh, then a voice booming over the massive concert speakers, amplified to a level that shook the walls. You know the rules, Nia. When we are with the partners, you do not correct me. Chase's face on the broadcast went pale. He looked back at the screen. No, he whispered. Cut the feed. Cut it. But the screen flared to life, and this time it was not a beach in Maui. It was a shaky, handheld video. It was the hallway of their home, and in the center of the frame, standing terrified in her kitchen, was Nia. The patrons in the bar stopped drinking. The bartender froze with the glass in his hand. On the screen, the video Chase slapped Nia. The sound was like a thunderclap. The audience in the hall gasped. A collective sound of 5,000 people realizing they had been deceived. Chase was running around the stage now, waving his arms at the control booth. Turn it off, he screamed. His voice was not on the microphone anymore, but the cameras caught his panic. "It is a hack. It is a deep fake. Don't look," but they could not stop looking. The video continued. The beating continued. Chase's voice narrated his own brutality. "This is for the Brotherhood. This is how we maintain order." I sat in the dark corner of the bar and took a sip of whiskey. The pain in my chest was still there, but for the first time in days, it felt bearable. I watched the empire crumble. I watched the hero turn into the villain in high definition. The video showed him throwing her down the stairs. It showed him checking his watch. It showed him whispering lesson learned. Then the screen went black again, and in the silence that followed, a silence so heavy it felt like the end of the world, text appeared on the screen in simple white letters. "Safe home cannot protect you from the monster holding the key." Pandemonium erupted in the convention hall. I saw people standing up. I saw investors throwing down their VIP badges. I saw reporters running toward the stage, not to praise him, but to corner him. And on the stage, Chase Miller, the man who owned the city, stood alone. He looked small. He looked naked. He looked around for an exit, but there was nowhere to go. The spotlight was still on him, but now it was an interrogation lamp. Vargas and his security team were rushing the stage, but not to protect him, to contain the riot. I put my glass down on the sticky table. I pulled the $100 bill from my pocket, the one Chase had thrown at me in the hospital. I placed it under the glass as a tip. I stood up. My legs were shaky, but I stood tall. I walked out of the bar and into the rain. I could hear the sirens starting in the distance. They were coming for him. And I knew they would be coming for me too eventually. But I did not care. I had built a bridge over the chasm of his lies, and I had walked my daughter across it to the truth. I took a deep breath. The air tasted like rain and exhaust and victory. It was time to go back to the hospital. It was time to sit with my girl. The judgment day had arrived, and the verdict was guilty. The whiskey glass sat untouched on the sticky bar table in front of me. The liquid trembled slightly, not from an earthquake, but from the pounding of my own heart. I was sitting in the corner of the Iron Horse, but my spirit was hovering in that convention center hall 3 blocks away. I watched the television screen above the bar. I watched the man who had tried to bury my family stand in the spotlight of his own making. Chase Miller was approaching the climax of his speech. He was a master orator. He knew exactly when to lower his voice to a whisper to draw people in, and when to raise it to a shout to ignite their passion. He was pacing the stage, his movements fluid and practiced. Behind him, the massive 60-foot LED screen displayed a soft focus image of a generic happy family, safe inside a digital bubble. "I want to show you the future," Chase said, his voice echoing through the bar's speakers. "I want to show you a world where fear is obsolete, a world where fathers do not have to worry, a world where husbands can protect the things they cherish most." He stopped in the center of the stage. He looked out at the thousands of people in the audience. He looked directly into the camera lens, and for a second it felt like he was looking right at me, right at the old mechanic hiding in the shadows. But he did not see me. He saw only his reflection. He saw only his glory. But to build this future, Chase continued, raising a hand to the heavens. We must understand the past. We must understand what it means to truly love someone. Love is not just flowers and anniversary dinners. Love is discipline. Love is structure. Love is doing whatever is necessary to keep your house in order. I felt a chill run down my spine. There it was, the word discipline. The same word he had used in the folder name on his secret server. The same word he used when he broke my daughter's ribs. Chase smiled, a benevolent, terrifying smile. "I want to show you my definition of love," he said. "I want to share a private moment. A testament to the bond I shared with my wife, Nia." He turned and gestured grandly to the screen behind him. "This is the cue, Dante. Push the button, son." Chase waited for the image of Nia on the beach to appear. He waited for the tear-jerking music to swell. He waited for the applause. But the screen did not show the beach. The screen flickered violently. The image of the happy digital family distorted, tearing apart like wet paper. The pixels bled into static. A harsh electronic screech tore through the audio system, causing people in the audience to cover their ears. Chase frowned. He tapped his earpiece. He looked toward the control booth where I had been just 30 minutes ago. "We seem to be having a technical glitch," he laughed nervously. "The ghosts in the machine are active tonight." But the static did not stop. It coalesced. It formed a solid black background, and then in jagged, blood-red letters that were 10 feet tall, words appeared on the screen. The real footage. The murmur in the crowd grew louder. People were pointing. Chase turned around and saw the words. His smile faltered. He took a half step back. "What is this?" he muttered into the microphone. "Cut the feed. Go to the backup." But Dante had done his job. The backup was gone. The main line was hijacked. The only thing playing in that hall was the truth. The red text vanished, and the video began. It was shaky at first. The angle was wide and distorted, the telltale sign of a GoPro camera strapped to a chest. The lighting was harsh, showing the pristine white tiles of a kitchen. And there she was. Nia. She was wearing her silk pajamas, the ones I gave her for Christmas. She was backing away, her hands raised in defense. Her face was already swollen. "Please, Chase," she sobbed. The audio was crystal clear, amplified by the massive concert speakers. It filled the cavernous hall. It filled the bar where I was sitting. It filled millions of living rooms across the country. "I didn't mean to embarrass you." Chase's voice boomed from behind the camera. It was calm, chillingly calm. "You did not embarrass me, Nia. You embarrassed yourself. You forgot your place." On stage, the real Chase stood frozen. He looked tiny against the giant image of his own crime. He looked like a bug pinned under a microscope. "Turn it off!" he screamed, his live voice cracked with panic. "It is a fake. It is AI generated. Turn it off now." But the video continued. On the screen, the camera moved forward. A hand came into view. A hand wearing the same platinum wedding band that was currently on Chase's finger. The hand struck. The sound of the slap was sickening. It was a wet, meaty impact that made the patrons in the bar flinch. Nia fell to the floor. The camera looked down at her. She was scrambling, trying to get away on the polished tile. "Get up," Chase's recorded voice commanded. "Do not act like an animal. Stand up and take your lesson." On stage, Chase was running toward the wings, waving frantically at the security team. Vargas was there shouting into his radio, but nothing was happening. The system was locked. The virus had paralyzed everything except the video player. Chase ran back to the center of the stage. He grabbed the podium. "Listen to me," he yelled. The microphone was still live. The audio from the video and the audio from the stage were mixing, creating a horrifying duet of abuse. "This is a setup. This is corporate sabotage. I did not do this." But then, the video, Chase spoke again. And he said something that sealed his fate forever. Something that no AI could replicate with such venom. Something that revealed the rot in his soul. The camera view shifted as he kicked her in the ribs. "You think you are special because you married me?" The recorded. Chase sneered. "You think you are one of us. You are just a guest in this house, Nia. You are just a quota I filled." He used a word then. A word that cut through the room like a knife. A racial slur that belonged in the darkest chapters of history, not in a modern tech launch. "See how I discipline this?" The slur hung in the air. The silence in the convention center was absolute. 5,000 people stopped breathing at the same time. The investors from Tokyo, the partners from London, the mayor. They all stared at the screen in horror. Chase on stage stopped screaming. He realized what had just been played. He realized that the mask had not just slipped, it had been ripped off and set on fire. He looked out at the audience. He looked for support. He looked for someone to believe him. But there was no support. There was only shock. And then slowly a rising tide of revulsion. The video continued. It showed him dragging her by the hair. It showed him throwing her down the stairs. The camera captured every second of the fall, the way her body twisted, the way she hit the landing, and finally, the whisper. Lesson learned. The screen went black. For 5 seconds, there was no sound, no applause, no music, just the hum of the ventilation system. Then someone in the front row stood up. It was not to clap, it was to leave. Then another person, then 100. Chase stood alone in the spotlight. He was shaking. He looked at the control booth, he looked at the exits. "You have to believe me," he pleaded. His voice was small now, stripped of all its power. "It is out of context. We were role-playing. It was consensual." A boo started from the balcony. A low rumble of anger. Then someone threw something. A water bottle. It hit the stage near his feet. Then the shouts began. Monster coward murderer Vargas and his team rushed the stage, but they were not forming a protective ring around him. They were surrounding him. They were containing the threat. I watched Chase's face crumble. The arrogant CEO, the visionary, the husband of the year dissolved before my eyes. In his place stood a terrified, abusive little boy who had finally been caught. I picked up my glass of whiskey. My hand was steady now. I drank it in one swallow. It burned, but it felt like a cleansing fire. I looked at the bartender. He was staring at the TV, his mouth open in disbelief. "He killed her," the bartender whispered. "He tried to kill her." I stood up and placed a hand on the bar to steady myself. The pain in my chest was waiting for me, ready to reclaim its territory, but for this one moment I felt weightless. "He didn't kill her," I said softly. "She is still fighting." I walked to the door of the bar. The rain had stopped. The sirens were louder now, converging on the convention center from all directions. Blue and red lights flashed against the skyscrapers, painting the city in the colors of justice. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I dialed Dante. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice trembling with adrenaline. "I saw it, son," I said. "The whole world saw it." "We did it," Dante said. "We burned it down." "Not yet," I said, looking toward the hospital. "The fire is just starting. Now comes the ash." I hung up. I needed to get back to Nia. I needed to be there when she woke up, because she was going to wake up. I knew it. The universe owed us that much. I started walking. I was a dying man with no money, and a warrant likely being written for my arrest. But as I walked through the wet streets, I felt richer than Chase Miller had ever been. I had my honor. I had my truth. And I had kept my promise. The king of the castle had fallen, and the old mechanic was coming to sweep up the pieces. The whiskey glass was empty, but I kept staring at the amber ring it left on the wood. It was a perfect circle, a closed loop, just like the trap I had built for Chase Miller. In the bar, the air was thick with tension. The patrons were no longer just watching a train wreck, they were witnessing an execution, a public dismantling of a man who thought he was untouchable. On the television screen, the video of Nia being beaten had faded to black. For a moment, the convention center was silent. Chase stood on the stage, his chest heaving, his tie crooked. He looked like he was about to vomit. He reached for the microphone, his hand trembling so violently that the feedback squealed through the speakers. "Please," he stammered. His voice was thin and reedy. "Please listen. That video is a deep fake. It is a manipulation by my competitors. They want to tank our stock price. They want to destroy Safe Home." He was desperate. He was flailing. And for a second I saw a flicker of doubt in the audience. People want to believe the lie. It is easier to believe that a billionaire is the victim of corporate espionage than to believe he is a monster who beats his wife in the kitchen. But Dante was not done. The script I had plugged into the server was not just a movie player, it was a wrecking ball. On the massive LED screen behind Chase, the blackness was replaced by a familiar interface. It was a screenshot of a messaging app. The colors were bright green and white. The timestamp was from the night of the assault. The header of the chat group read, "The Inner Circle." Chase turned around and saw it. He let out a sound that was half scream and half sob. He lunged toward the screen as if he could block the 60-foot image with his body. "Stop it!" he shrieked. "Turn it off!" But the messages began to scroll. They were magnified so large that people in the back row could read every typo. User Chase Miller. She is down. I might have broken a rib. She wouldn't stop crying about the dinner party. User Bradley Lawyer. Don't call an ambulance yet. Let me prep the narrative. We need to frame this as a break-in. And then the message that made the entire room gasp. The message that turned the tragedy into a conspiracy. User Chase Miller. Don't worry about the cops. Sheriff Barker is on the payroll. I just transferred 50 grand to his re-election fund. He will write whatever report I tell him to write. The camera cut to the front row of the audience. Sitting right there next to the mayor was Sheriff Barker. He was a big man with a red face and a chest full of medals. But right now he looked like he was shrinking. His face went from red to a sickly shade of gray. He looked at the screen. He looked at the chat log that confirmed he had sold his badge for $50,000. The mayor slowly stood up and moved away from him. It was a small movement, but it was a death sentence. The circle of isolation formed around the sheriff instantly. Barker stood up. He tried to smile. He tried to wave it off like it was a joke. But then he saw the reporters. The press pit was a chaotic swarm of flashing lights and shouting voices. They were not pointing their cameras at the stage anymore. They were pointing them at him. Sheriff Barker, panic in his eyes, turned and tried to push his way down the aisle. "Excuse me," he shouted, shoving a woman out of the way. I have to handle this investigation." But the crowd blocked him. These were the people who had voted for him. These were the people who trusted him to keep them safe. And now they knew he was just a hired goon for a rich wife-beater. They did not let him pass. A wall of bodies formed. Someone grabbed his shoulder. Someone else grabbed his arm. The sheriff was swallowed by the mob of cameras and microphones shouting questions he could not answer. Back on stage, Chase realized he had lost his shield. The police were not coming to save him. The police were the co-conspirators. He looked out at the sea of faces, 5,000 people who had paid hundreds of dollars to be there, 5,000 people who had bought into his myth. The booing started low like distant thunder. Then it grew. It became a roar. It became a physical force that hit the stage. "Liar," someone screamed from the balcony. "Fraud," another voice shouted. Then the first object flew. It was a plastic water bottle. It arced through the air, catching the stage lights, and hit Chase square in the chest. Water exploded over his expensive Italian suit. It was the signal. The dam broke. Suddenly the air was filled with debris, programs, soda cans, half-eaten sandwiches. The audience was not just angry, they were insulted. They had clapped for him. They had admired him. And now they felt dirty. They wanted to scrub the stain of their admiration away with violence. Chase shielded his face with his arms. He backed away, tripping over a monitor wedge. He fell hard on his backside. The great CEO, the visionary, the man of the future, was crawling on the floor like a crab trying to escape the tide. Vargas and his private security team rushed onto the stage. But they were hesitant. They were mercenaries. They fought for money, not for loyalty. And they knew a sinking ship when they saw one. "Get me out of here!" Chase screamed at Vargas. "Get me to the car!" Vargas looked at the crowd. He looked at the sheriff being mauled by the press. He looked at Chase covered in water and trash. Vargas grabbed Chase by the collar of his jacket and hauled him up. Not gently. He dragged him toward the side exit. But the side exit was blocked. The crowd from the floor had surged forward. They were climbing onto the stage. They wanted to touch him. They wanted to hurt him. Chase's eyes were wide with terror. He had never known fear. He had known stress. He had known pressure. But he had never known the primal fear of a mob that wants blood. "No," he whimpered. "Stay back. I am Chase Miller. I own this building." A woman in the front row reached up and grabbed his ankle. She yanked hard. Chase went down again. His shoe, the custom leather shoe he had kicked my daughter with, slipped off his foot. He kicked blindly, losing his dignity with every movement. Vargas pulled his baton. "Back off," he shouted, swinging wildly. The crowd surged back for a second, but they were not afraid. They were righteous. I sat in the bar watching the chaos unfold on the screen. It was biblical. It was the Tower of Babel falling down. The camera zoomed in on Chase's face as he was dragged off stage by his security team. He was missing a shoe. His jacket was torn. His hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat and soda. He looked into the lens, and for the first time the world saw the real Chase. Not the curated image. Not the photoshopped hero, but the scared, weak little man who needed to hurt women to feel powerful. The feed cut to the news anchor in the studio. She looked shell-shocked. She touched her earpiece, listening to the producer. We are receiving reports of a riot at the convention center," she stammered. "The launch of Safe Home has turned into a scene of absolute chaos following the leak of incriminating evidence against CEO Chase Miller." I finished my drink. I put the glass down. The pain in my chest was still there, but it felt different now. It was not a weight. It was a reminder. A reminder that I was still alive. I had outlived his empire. My phone buzzed. It was Dante. "Server is wiped," the text read. "We are ghosts. Get out of there, Pops. The cops are gonna lock that whole block down." I stood up. My legs felt heavy but steady. I looked at the bartender. "He gets what he deserves," the bartender said, shaking his head. "I hope they throw him in a cell with the biggest, meanest guys they have." I nodded. "They will," I said, "and he won't have his checkbook to save him this time." I walked out of the bar. The street outside was a parking lot of flashing lights. Police cars, fire trucks, ambulances. The noise was deafening. I pulled the collar of my jumpsuit up and lowered my head. I shuffled past the barricades. A cop shouted at me to move along. I nodded and kept walking. Just an old janitor going home after a long shift. Just a piece of the background scenery. I walked 2 blocks until the noise of the sirens started to fade. The rain had started again, washing the city clean. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled picture of Nia I always carried. I smoothed it out. "I told you, baby girl," I whispered. "I told you I would fix it." Chase was finished. His company was dead. His reputation was ashes. But my job was not done. I needed to make sure that the money, the millions he had hidden away, the millions he tried to kill her for, ended up exactly where it belonged. I needed to find the money trail. I hailed a cab. The driver looked at my dirty clothes with suspicion. "Cash up front," I said, showing him the change from the $100 bill. "Where to?" he asked. "The hospital," I said. "I have a daughter to wake up." As the cab pulled away, I looked back at the skyline. The lights of the convention center were still blazing, but the party was over. The king was dead. Long live the truth. The rain against the taxi window blurred the city lights into streaks of neon blood. I sat in the back seat, clutching my chest, trying to breathe shallowly so the fluid in my lungs would not drown me. The radio was buzzing with the news. Every station was talking about the riot at the convention center. They were talking about the video. They were talking about the fall of Chase Miller. But the war was not over. A wounded animal is the most dangerous kind, and Chase was hurt bad. My phone vibrated in my hand. It was Dante. He was not just tracking me, he was tracking everything. He had tapped into the municipal traffic cameras and the GPS in Chase's luxury sedan. "He is moving," Dante said, his voice tight with focus. "Vargas got him out the service exit. They are in the Lincoln heading west on 4th Street. I leaned forward. "Driver," I said, "take the expressway. Go west." The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. He saw an old man in a dirty jumpsuit, but something in my voice made him nod. He hit the gas. Dante kept talking in my ear. "He is panicking, Pops. I can see it on the internal dash cam. He is screaming at Vargas. He is trying to make calls." I closed my eyes and pictured it. Chase sitting in the back of that leather interior, realizing his kingdom was burning. Who do you call when the world turns against you? You call the one person who has always bailed you out. "He is calling his father," Dante said. "He is calling Judge Miller." I let out a low, humorless laugh. Judge Miller. The man who sat on the federal bench and handed out maximum sentences to kids from my neighborhood, while his own son committed felonies in a mansion. "Is the judge picking up?" I asked. "No," Dante replied. "It went to voicemail." He called again. Voicemail. Of course. Rats abandoned a sinking ship, and the judge was the biggest rat of them all. He saw the news. He saw the video. He knew his son was radioactive. He was cutting him loose to save his own career. "That must hurt, Chase," I whispered. "To realize your father loves his reputation more than he loves you." I looked out the window. We were passing the exit for the airport. "He is not going to the airport," I said. "No," Dante confirmed. "He can't. I just triggered the second phase of the attack." I waited. This was the part of the plan that Dante had enjoyed the most. The financial guillotine. "I am watching his banking activity in real time," Dante said. "He just tried to transfer $5 million to an offshore account in the Caymans. Denied. He tried to use his black card to book a private jet. Declined." I could hear the keys clacking furiously on Dante's end. I just flagged every account linked to his social security number as suspicious activity related to a federal investigation, Dante said. "His credit cards are plastic scrap. His bank accounts are frozen blocks of ice. He does not have enough money to buy a hamburger, let alone a plane ticket." Chase Miller, the man who measured his worth in zeros, was now worth less than the change in my pocket. "So where is he going?" I asked. "The car stopped," Dante said suddenly. "What do you mean stopped?" "He is at a red light on Martin Luther King Boulevard. But something is happening." The back door opened. I waited, my heart hammering. "Vargas just got out," Dante said. "He is walking away. He is leaving him in the middle of the street." I smiled. A grim, painful smile. Mercenaries do not work for free. Vargas must have gotten the alert that his retainer check had bounced. No money, no loyalty. Chase was truly alone now. "He is climbing into the driver's seat," Dante said. He looks He looks insane, Pops. He is driving on the sidewalk. He is pushing through traffic. He is heading for the suburbs. He is going home, I said. Why, Dante asked. The police are already on their way there. Why go back to the crime scene? Because he thinks he can scrub it, I said. He knows the cloud is compromised. He knows the video is out. But he thinks the original files, the full unedited history of his abuse, is still sitting on that physical server in the basement. He thinks if he destroys the hard drives, he destroys the evidence for the trial. He does not know you have the copy, Dante said. No, I said, and he does not know I am coming for him. I told the driver to drive faster. I peeled another $100 bill from the roll I had taken from my savings hidden under my floorboards years ago. Get me to the Highlands, I said. Don't stop for red lights. The chase was on. Two fathers racing toward the same house, one driving a stolen luxury car fueled by panic, the other riding in a yellow cab fueled by justice and painkillers. We arrived at the gates of the community 10 minutes later. The guard shack was empty. The guards had probably seen the news and decided they did not want to be accessories to a monster. The gate was hanging open, bent off its hinges. Chase must have rammed it. The taxi driver stopped at the bottom of the driveway. I can't go up there, man, he said, looking at the dark mansion on the hill. That place looks like trouble. I handed him the money. You did good, son. Go home to your family. I stepped out into the rain. The house loomed above me. It was dark. The power was still cut from when I was there earlier. Or maybe Dante had cut it again. It looked like a skull sitting on the hill hollow and dead. I saw Chase's car parked on the front lawn. The door was open. One headlight was smashed. Tire tracks tore up the pristine grass that he used to yell at the gardeners about. I walked up the driveway. I did not run. I could not run. My body was failing. My legs felt like lead, but my mind was sharp. I walked past the car. I saw his suit jacket thrown on the ground. He had shed his skin. The front door was wide open. I stepped inside. The silence was heavy. I could hear movement downstairs. A crashing sound. Metal on metal. He was in the basement. I walked to the kitchen first. I opened the drawer where I knew he kept his tools. I did not take a knife. I did not take a weapon. I took a heavy flashlight. I walked to the basement door. I could hear him screaming. Not words, just sounds. Animal sounds of frustration and rage. I descended the stairs. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness. There he was. Chase was standing in front of the server rack. He had a crowbar in his hand. He was smashing the machines. Sparks were flying. Glass was shattering. He was destroying millions of dollars of equipment, trying to kill the memory of what he had done. He looked wild. His shirt was torn. He was sweating. He was crying. Die, he screamed, swinging the crowbar. Die, you stupid machine! He hit the main tower. It buckled. He hit it again. He thought he was winning. He thought he was erasing the past. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and watched him. I let him tire himself out. I let him expend his energy on metal and plastic. Finally, he stopped. He dropped the crowbar. He slumped against the ruined desk, panting, heaving for breath. "It is gone," he whispered. "It is all gone." "No," I said, stepping into the light. "It is not gone." Chase spun around. He squinted into the beam of my flashlight. He raised a hand to shield his eyes. "Who is there?" he hissed. I lowered the light just enough so he could see my face. The face of the janitor. The face of the mechanic. The face of the father. "Silas," he gasped. "You missed a spot, Chase," I said, pointing to the ruined server. "You can smash the box, but you cannot smash the truth." Chase laughed. A high-pitched, hysterical sound. "The truth," he said, stepping toward me. "The truth is whatever I say it is. I destroyed the drives. The video online, I will say it was faked. My lawyers will bury it. Without the original files, you have nothing." He picked up the crowbar again. "And you," he said, his voice dropping, "you are trespassing. You are an intruder. And under the castle doctrine, I have the right to defend my home." He took another step. "I am going to kill you, Silas," he said. "And then I am going to put the crowbar in your dead hand and tell the police you broke in and attacked me. It will be the perfect ending to my story." I did not move. I did not flinch. I looked at him with pity. "You still don't get it, do you, son?" I said. "Get what?" he sneered, raising the weapon. "I am not here to fight you," I said. "I am here to keep you busy." Chase froze. He heard it then, the sound of sirens, not in the distance, but right outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the basement windows, illuminating the wreckage he had created. I stepped aside as the front door upstairs burst open. Police shouted a voice. "Come out with your hands up!" Chase looked at the stairs. He looked at me. He looked at the crowbar in his hand. "It is over, Chase," I said. But Chase was not a man who accepted defeat. He looked at me with eyes full of madness. "If I am going down," he whispered, "I am taking you with me." He raised the crowbar high and charged. I stood my ground. I was old. I was sick. But I was ready. The crowbar was raised high above his head, a jagged piece of steel meant to crush my skull. Chase Miller came at me with a scream that was not human. It was the sound of a cornered rat, the sound of an ego shattering under the weight of its own lies. He was younger than me. He was stronger than me. In a fair fight, he would have broken every bone in my dying body. But war is never fair, and I had brought insurance. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I simply raised my right hand, the hand that was not holding the flashlight. In my palm rested a heavy piece of history, a Colt M1911 pistol. It was the sidearm I had carried in the jungle 50 years ago. The metal was worn smooth by time and memory, but the mechanism was oiled and perfect. I pulled the hammer back. Click. That sound. That small mechanical click cut through his scream like a razor blade. It was a sound that triggers a primal instinct in every man, the instinct to freeze. Chase stopped. The crowbar hovered in the air inches from striking distance. His chest was heaving. His eyes were wide fixed on the black muzzle pointing directly at his heart. "Drop it," I said. My voice was low. It was the voice of the earth speaking to the storm. Chase hesitated. He looked at the gun. He looked at my face. He saw the intent in my eyes. He realized that the man standing in front of him was not a janitor. He was not a helpless old father-in-law. He was a man who had looked death in the face 1,000 times and never blinked. The crowbar clattered to the concrete floor. The sound echoed in the ruined basement, ringing off the smashed servers and broken glass. Chase took a step back, holding his hands up. He was shaking. The madness in his eyes was replaced by terror. You have a gun," he stammered. "That is illegal. You are threatening me." I lowered the weapon slightly, but I did not put it away. I walked past him, moving slow and steady. I walked to the heavy oak desk he had set up in the corner of the basement, his command center, his throne room. I sat down in his leather chair. It groaned under my weight. I placed the gun on the desk. The steel made a heavy thud against the wood. "Sit down, Chase," I said, pointing to a folding chair across from me. He didn't move. He looked at the stairs, hoping for an escape. "The police are outside, son," I said. "You can hear them. There is nowhere to go. Sit down." Chase slumped into the chair. He looked like a deflated balloon. His expensive suit was torn. His face was smeared with grime and sweat. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and confusion. Why, he whispered, "Why did you do this? I gave you money. I let you stay in my house. I was going to pay for her care." I reached into my jumpsuit pocket. I pulled out a manila envelope. It was thick. I tossed it onto the desk. It slid across the polished surface and stopped right in front of him. "You tried to kill her, Chase," I said. "You beat her until she broke. And then you tried to erase her. You thought because I was old, because I was poor, that I wouldn't notice. You thought I was just background noise." Chase looked at the envelope. "What is this?" "Open it." He reached out with a trembling hand and opened the flap. He pulled out the papers. It wasn't just the transcript of the video. It was everything. Dante had been busy. Chase's eyes scanned the pages. His face went pale. This is my bank ledger," he said. "This is my offshore shell company. It is I confirmed. We didn't just find the video, Chase. We followed the money. We know about the bribes to the sheriff. We know about the insurance fraud. We know you were shorting your own stock before the launch so you could buy it back cheap. We know everything." Chase dropped the papers. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw the realization of total defeat. "You ruined me," he said, his voice cracking. "I am bankrupt. My reputation is gone." I leaned forward. The pain in my chest was a dull throb now, a reminder that my time was short. "I didn't ruin you, Chase. I just turned on the lights. The roaches were already there." He looked at the gun on the desk. He looked at my hands. "Are you going to shoot me?" he asked. "Is that how this ends? You kill me, And then the cops kill you. I picked up the gun. I weighed it in my hand. It felt comfortable. It felt like an old friend. I thought about it, I admitted. When I saw that video, when I saw you kick my baby girl down those stairs, I wanted to put a bullet right between your eyes. I wanted to watch the light go out. It would have been justice. Chase flinched, closing his eyes, waiting for the flash. But I am not going to kill you, I said. He opened his eyes. Why not? Because I am dying, Chase. The words hung in the air between us. I have stage 4 lung fibrosis, I said, tapping my chest. My lungs are turning to stone. I have maybe a month left, maybe a week. I am a dead man walking. I stood up. I walked around the desk until I was standing over him. If I kill you, it is over quickly, I said. You don't suffer. You become a victim. People might even feel sorry for you. And me, I die in a cell or a hospital ward. It doesn't matter. My sentence is already written by God. I leaned down close enough to smell the fear on him. But you, Chase, you are young. You are healthy. You are going to live a long, long time. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. And you are going to live it in a cage. Chase stared at me, paralyzed by the truth of my words. You are going to federal prison, son, I whispered. And do you know who is in federal prison? Do you know who fills those cell blocks? I pointed to the papers on the desk where the transcript of his racial slurs was highlighted in yellow. The very people you hate, I said. The men you called animals. The men you called by that ugly word you used in the video. You are going to be locked in a box with them for 20 or 30 years. Chase's breathing hitched. He started to hyperventilate. You are going to be the only soft, rich white boy in a sea of hard men, I continued. And they have TVs in prison, Chase. They saw the news. They know what you did to a black woman. They know what you called them. I patted him on the shoulder. He flinched as if I had burned him. I don't need to kill you, I said. I am just the delivery man. I am delivering you to hell. Chase began to cry. Not the fake tears from the stage. Real ugly sobs of terror. He realized the future that was waiting for him. A future of violence and fear. A future where his money could not protect him. Please, he begged, grabbing my leg. Please, Silas, shoot me. Just shoot me. Don't let them take me. I pulled my leg away. Save your prayers, I said. You are going to need them. The sound of boots pounding on the floorboards above us signaled the end. The police were in the house. Police, show us your hands. The voices were coming down the stairs. I picked up the gun. I ejected the magazine. I pulled back the slide to clear the chamber. A single bullet spun out and hit the floor with a chime. I placed the empty weapon on the desk. I placed my hands on my head. I am down here, I shouted. We are unarmed. Chase was curled in a ball on the floor, sobbing into his ruined suit. He was broken. A team of SWAT officers poured into the basement. Their tactical lights blinded us. Their rifles were trained on my chest. Don't move. Get on the ground. I slowly lowered myself to my knees. I laid face down on the cold concrete. The pain in my chest flared, but I welcomed it. Officer, down here, one of the cops shouted. We have 2 suspects. They grabbed my arms. They pulled them behind my back. I felt the cold steel of the handcuffs click shut. I turned my head to the side. I watched them grab Chase. He fought them. He screamed. He kicked. No, you can't take me. I am Chase Miller. They slammed him against the server rack. He cried out in pain. They cuffed him and dragged him toward the stairs. He looked back at me one last time. His eyes were wide with madness. You are dead, old man, he screamed. You are dead. I just watched him go. I am already dead, son, I thought. But you are just beginning to die. A young officer hauled me up. He looked at my maintenance jumpsuit. He looked at the gun on the desk. He looked confused. Who are you? He asked. I looked him in the eye. I stood as tall as my failing body would allow. I am nobody, I said. I am just the janitor. I just took out the trash. The officer didn't understand, but he walked me up the stairs. We walked out of the basement. We walked out of the house. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air was crisp and clean. The flashing lights of the police cars illuminated the night. I took a deep breath. It hurt, but it tasted sweet. They led me to a patrol car. As they pushed my head down to put me in the back seat, I looked up at the sky. The stars were coming out. I did it, Rose, I whispered. Our girl is safe. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the window. I was going to jail. But for the first time in months, I felt free. The basement was no longer a room. It was a pressure cooker of noise and light. The tactical teams poured down the wooden stairs like a waterfall of black Kevlar and blinding LEDs. They moved with a synchronization that was terrifying to behold. These were not the local deputies who Chase had invited to his summer barbecues. These were not the men who looked the other way when he drove drunk through the neighborhood. These men wore windbreakers with 3 yellow letters printed on the back. FBI. I stayed on my knees, my hands interlocked behind my head, just as they had instructed. The cold concrete dug into my skin, but I did not shift. I kept my eyes on the floor, focusing on a shard of glass from the server Chase had destroyed. It reflected the chaos above me like a kaleidoscope of violence. Freeze, federal agents. The commands echoed off the concrete walls. Chase was still standing near the desk. He was blinking into the lights, his hands raised halfway in a gesture of confusion rather than surrender. He looked like a man who had woken up in a nightmare and was waiting for his butler to wake him up. "Gentlemen," he shouted, his voice cracking with a desperate attempt at authority. "Thank God you are here. This man is an intruder. He has a gun. I was defending my property." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Arrest him. He is the one you want." 2 agents moved toward him. They did not lower their rifles. They did not acknowledge his status or his expensive suit. To them, he was just a suspect in a high-priority federal investigation. "Get on the ground," the lead agent bellowed. Chase took a step back. "No, you do not understand. I am Chase Miller. I am the CEO of Safe Home. I called the police." He reached into his jacket pocket. Maybe he was reaching for his phone. Maybe he was reaching for his wallet to show ID. It was a stupid move, a fatal move in the eyes of law enforcement. "Gun," an agent shouted. Before Chase could explain, before he could pull out his platinum credit card, 3 agents hit him. It was a kinetic wave of force. They tackled him with the kind of brutality reserved for violent felons. Chase hit the floor hard. His face bounced off the expensive Persian rug he had put down in his command center to dampen the sound. The air left his lungs in a whoosh. "Get off me!" he screamed, muffled by the wool. "Do you know who I am? I will sue you. I will have your badges." One of the agents pressed a knee into the small of Chase's back, pinning him down. Another grabbed his right arm and wrenched it behind him. I heard the pop of a shoulder joint straining. Chase howled in pain. "Stop resisting," the agent yelled. "I am not resisting." Chase sobbed. "I am the victim." He broke in. "He is the criminal." I watched from my spot on the floor. It was pathetic. The man who had beaten my daughter with such cold, calculated precision was now flailing like a toddler having a tantrum. He had no dignity. He had no spine. Without his money and his lawyers, he was nothing but a bag of soft noise. An agent approached me. He was younger with calm eyes. He saw the empty gun on the desk. He saw my compliance. "Sir, I need you to lie flat on your stomach," he said firmly but not unkindly. I lowered myself down. I felt the agent's hands on my arms. He cuffed me efficiently. The metal was cold, but it did not feel like a restraint. It felt like a period at the end of a long sentence. "You are under arrest," the agent recited. "You have the right to remain silent." I remained silent. I had said everything I needed to say. They hauled me up to my feet. My chest screamed in protest, the fluid in my lungs shifting with the movement. I coughed, a dry, rattling sound that tasted of copper. The agent steadied me, holding my elbow. "Are you injured, sir?" he asked. "I am dying, son," I whispered. "But not tonight." They began to march me toward the stairs. I had to walk past Chase. They were still struggling to cuff him. He was kicking and twisting, spitting foam and insults. "This is a mistake," Chase screamed into the rug. "That man is a terrorist. He hacked my company. He is destroying America." As I walked by, I stopped for just a second. The agent holding me tried to nudge me forward, but I planted my feet. I looked down at the man who had ruined my family. His face was pressed against the floor, his cheek squashed flat, his eye bulging as he looked up at me. Our eyes locked. He waited for me to say something. He waited for me to gloat. He waited for me to curse him. But I gave him something worse. I looked at him with absolute indifference. I looked at him the way you look at a dead rat in a trap. No anger, no pity, just a hygiene problem that has been solved. I turned my head and kept walking. No Chase shrieked as I walked away. "Look at me. Don't you walk away from me. "You old piece of trash, I own you." His voice faded as I climbed the stairs. We emerged from the basement into the main hallway of the mansion. The front door was wide open, letting in the cool night air. The scene outside was blinding. The entire cul-de-sac was lit up by flashing red and blue lights. There were police cruisers, SWAT vans, and unmarked federal sedans. A helicopter chopped the air overhead, its spotlight sweeping the lawn. The neighbors were out. The doctors and lawyers and bankers who lived in this gated paradise were standing on their manicured lawns in their silk bathrobes, holding coffee cups and cell phones. They watched as the police led me out. I held my head high. I was wearing a dirty maintenance jumpsuit. I was in handcuffs. I looked like a criminal. But I did not feel shame. The shame belonged to this house. They led me to the back of a black SUV. The agent opened the door and helped me in. The seat was leather, warm and comfortable. Through the tinted window, I watched the front door of the house. A minute later, they brought Chase out. He was not walking. He was being dragged. His feet were dragging on the pavement, ruining his Italian leather shoes. His suit was torn at the shoulder. His hair was wild, standing up in tufts. He was still screaming, still fighting, still trying to bargain with reality. "Call the governor," he shouted at a cameraman who had managed to sneak past the perimeter. "Tell him Chase Miller is being kidnapped." The agent shoved him into the back of a police van. The metal door slammed shut, cutting off his voice. The silence that followed was heavy. The agent who had arrested me climbed into the driver's seat of the SUV. Another agent got in the passenger side. He turned around and looked at me through the wire mesh. "Silas Jones," he said, looking at a tablet. "Or should I say Booker Lewis? We have been looking for you since the broadcast started." I leaned my head back against the seat. "I am not hard to find," I said. The agent studied me. "We saw the video, Mr. Lewis. The whole country saw it. The Bureau has seized the servers at the convention center. We are seizing the servers in the house now." He paused. "Technically, you committed about 40 felonies tonight. Breaking and entering, grand larceny, computer fraud, wiretapping, possession of an unregistered firearm." I nodded. "I know the list." The agent looked out the window at the van where Chase was caged. "But between you and me," the agent said, his voice lowering, "my sister was in an abusive marriage for 10 years. The guy was a pillar of the community. Nobody believed her." He looked back at me. "Whatever happens next, Mr. Lewis, you did good." I closed my eyes. A single tear leaked out and rolled down my cheek. It was not for me. It was for the years my daughter had suffered in silence. "Is she okay?" I asked. "My daughter." The agent nodded. "We have a team at the hospital. She is under federal protection now. No one gets near her without a badge. And the doctors say she is showing signs of brain activity. She is fighting. She gets that from her mother," I said softly. The SUV engine rumbled to life. We began to roll down the long driveway, leaving the skull-like mansion behind. I watched the house disappear in the distance. It was just a pile of bricks and wood now. The monster who lived there was gone. We turned onto the main road. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance. Somewhere in that city, Dante was scrubbing his digital footprints, disappearing back into the shadows. Somewhere in that city, Nia was sleeping safe for the first time in years. And me, I was going to a cell. But as I looked at my reflection in the dark window, I did not see a prisoner. I saw a father who had finished his shift. The pain in my chest was still there, waiting to claim me. But for the first time in a long time, I was not afraid of the dark. I took a deep breath of the sterile, conditioned air. "Take me in, officer," I said. "I am ready to rest." The chair next to the hospital bed had become an extension of my body. For 14 days I had sat in the same spot, watching the rise and fall of my daughter's chest. The doctors told me that the swelling in her brain was going down, but they could not promise when or if she would wake up. They told me I should go home and rest. They told me that a man in my condition with lungs turning to stone needed to be in a bed of his own. I told them that I would leave this room when I walked out with my daughter or when they carried me out in a bag. There was no third option. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The rain that had washed away Chase's empire had finally stopped, leaving behind a pale, weak sunlight that filtered through the blinds. I was peeling an apple with a small pocket knife I had managed to hide from the nurses. The rhythmic sound of the blade slicing through the skin was the only thing keeping me grounded. Slice, peel, slice, peel. My hands were thinner than they were 2 weeks ago. The cancer was eating me alive from the inside out. I could feel my ribs pressing against my skin. Every breath was a negotiation with gravity, but I was still here. I had made a deal with God. I told him he could take me the moment she opened her eyes, not a second before. I let a long coil of red apple skin fall into the trash can. I looked up at her, and she was looking at me. It happened just like that. No dramatic gasp, no flailing. Just two brown eyes open and aware, staring at me with a mixture of confusion and terror. The knife slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. I didn't care. I leaned forward, ignoring the screaming pain in my chest. "Nia," I whispered. "Baby girl, can you hear me?" Her eyes darted around the room. She was scanning the corners. She was looking for the shadows. She was looking for him. "Chase," she rasped. Her voice was dry and broken like dead leaves. "Where is he? He was just here." She tried to sit up, but the machines beeped in protest. Her heart rate monitor spiked. She was panicking. The trauma was not a memory for her. It was right now. In her mind, she was still at the bottom of those stairs waiting for the next kick. I reached out and took her hand. It was trembling. "He is not here, Nia," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "He is never coming back." She looked at me, and I saw the doubt. She had lived in his prison for so long, she did not know what freedom looked like. "He will come," she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He always comes back, Dad. He will be angry. He will hurt you. You have to go. Please, go before he finds you." I squeezed her hand. I squeezed it hard enough to anchor her to reality. "He cannot hurt anyone anymore, baby," I said. "He is in a cage." Nia stopped crying for a second. She blinked. "A cage." I stood up. I needed her to see me. I needed her to see the truth in my eyes. "We got him, Nia, Dante and I. We showed the world what he did. We showed them the video." Her hand flew to her mouth. "The video," she whispered. The one from the kitchen." "Yes," I said. "Everyone saw it. The police, the judges, his investors, his friends. Everyone know who he is now. He was arrested 2 weeks ago. He is in federal custody facing charges that will keep him locked up until he is an old man." I watched the information sink in. I watched her process the impossible. The monster who had controlled every aspect of her life, who had tracked her calories and monitored her phone calls and timed her showers, was gone. But how, she asked. "He is so powerful, Dad. He has so much money." I smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was genuine. "Not anymore," I said. Just then the door to the room opened. I tensed up out of habit, but it was not a threat. It was a woman in a sharp navy suit carrying a leather briefcase. She looked at me and nodded respectfully. Then she looked at Nia. "Mrs. Miller," she said softly. "Or should I say Ms. Lewis? My name is Sarah Jenkins. I am the court-appointed trustee handling the liquidation of Chase Miller's assets." Nia looked at me confused. "Liquidation?" Ms. Jenkins walked to the foot of the bed. She did not treat Nia like a victim. She treated her like the owner of the room. When the video was released, Safe Home's stock plummeted to zero overnight, she explained. "The company has filed for bankruptcy. The board of directors is suing Mr. Miller for fraud. But before any of that happened, the federal court granted an emergency injunction freezing his personal assets." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick document. "Under the Victims of Crime Act, and due to the severity of the assault verified by the video evidence, the judge has ordered immediate restitution." She handed the document to me. I held it up for Nia to see. "What does it mean?" Nia asked. "It means Ms. Jenkins said that everything he owns, the house, the cars, the offshore accounts we recovered, the patent rights, it all belongs to you now. It is a settlement for pain and suffering and punitive damages." Nia stared at the lawyer. "I don't want his money," she whispered. "I don't want anything from him. I just want him to leave me alone." Ms. Jenkins softened. She stepped closer. "It is not his money anymore, Nia. It is the price of your freedom. And it is the tool you will use to rebuild. You can burn it. You can donate it. You can use it to buy an island and never speak to anyone again. But it is yours. He has nothing. He is currently being represented by a public defender because he cannot afford a private attorney. A public defender. The irony was so sweet I could taste it. Chase Miller, the man who bragged about his $500 an hour legal team, was now begging for help from an overworked state lawyer. Naya looked at me. Her eyes were wide. "He is really gone, Dad." I nodded. I reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "He is gone, baby girl. The lock is broken. The door is open." Nia closed her eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath. It was the sound of a weight being lifted, a weight she had carried for years. When she opened her eyes again, they were different. The terror was fading, replaced by a spark of something else. Survival. "Dad," she said, "I want to sell the house." I nodded. "We will sell it." "I want to sell the cars," she said, her voice getting stronger. "I want to sell the jewelry he bought me. I want to sell every single thing he ever touched. We will sell it all, I promised." And then she said, looking at the window, "Then I want to buy a small house, somewhere with a garden, somewhere with no cameras, and I want you to come live with me." I froze. The pain in my chest flared, a sharp reminder of my timeline. I had not told her yet. I had not told her that the clock was running out. I looked at her hopeful face. She had just got her life back. I could not take her father away from her in the same breath. "We will see, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "We have plenty of time to plan." Ms. Jenkins cleared her throat. "There is one more thing," she said. "The trial is set for next month. You don't have to go. The video evidence is enough to convict him a dozen times over. But the prosecutor wanted you to know that Chase has been trying to send letters from prison." Naya stiffened. "Letters?" she asked. Ms. Jenkins nodded. "We have intercepted all of them. You will never have to see them. But he keeps writing the same thing. He keeps saying that he forgives you." Naya laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "He forgives me. For what? For surviving." "For exposing him," I said. "Narcissists never change, Nia. He still thinks he is the hero of the story. He thinks we are the villains who ruined his perfect life." "Let him write," Nia said. "Let him write to the walls." "I don't care." Ms. Jenkins smiled. "I will convey that to the prosecutor. I will leave you two alone. You have a lot of paperwork to sign when you are ready, Ms. Lewis. But there is no rush. You have all the time in the world." The lawyer left the room, closing the door softly. Silence returned to the room, but it was not the heavy, oppressive silence of the last 2 weeks. It was a peaceful silence. I picked up the apple I had dropped. I wiped it off on my shirt. I pulled out my knife again. "Do you want a slice?" I asked. Nia looked at the apple. She looked at my hands, the rough, scarred hands of a mechanic that had built bridges and destroyed monsters. "Yes, Dad," she said. "I would like that." I sliced a piece of the white fruit and handed it to her. She took it with her good hand. She took a bite. It was a small thing, eating a piece of apple. But it was the first act of her new life. "Dad," she said, chewing slowly. "Yeah, baby. Thank you." I did not ask what she was thanking me for. I knew. I sat back in the chair. My lungs were burning. My body was tired. So incredibly tired. I could feel the energy draining out of me like water from a cracked vessel. I had fought the war. I had won the battle. I had saved the princess. But every soldier knows that eventually the war comes home with you. I looked at Naya eating her apple. She was going to be okay. She was rich. She was safe. She was free. I could feel the darkness encroaching at the edges of my vision. Not the darkness of evil, but the darkness of rest. I gripped the armrests of the chair. Not yet, I told myself. Not yet. Just a little longer. Let me watch her eat. Let me see her smile one more time. I took a deep breath and hid the shudder that ran through my frame. So I said, keeping my voice light, "A garden, huh? What are we going to plant?" Nia smiled. And for the first time in 3 years, it reached her eyes. "Roses," she said. "We are going to plant roses for Mom." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Roses sound perfect," I said. And as I sat there watching my daughter plan a future I would not be a part of, I felt a profound sense of peace. It was a good trade. My life for hers. It was the best deal I had ever made. The adrenaline that had fueled my war against Chase Miller was a powerful drug, but like all drugs, it had a crash. And my crash was absolute. The federal agents didn't even get me to a holding cell. I collapsed in the booking area of the precinct. My legs just stopped working. The concrete floor rushed up to meet me, and the last thing I heard was the shout of a desk sergeant calling for a medic. When I woke up, I was not in a prison infirmary. I was back in the same hospital where I had kept vigil over my daughter. But this time the roles were reversed. I was the one in the bed hooked up to the monitors and the oxygen lines. And sitting in the chair next to me holding my hand was Nia. It had been 3 days since the arrest. 3 days since the world saw the truth. I looked at my daughter. She looked tired, but it was a good tired. It was the exhaustion of someone who has been busy cleaning up a mess, not the exhaustion of someone living in fear. She was reading a document with a highlighter in her hand. "Hey, kiddo," I whispered. My voice was barely a scratch against the silence. Nia looked up. Her face lit up. She dropped the papers and squeezed my hand. "Dad," she said, "you are awake. The doctor said, well, he said you were sleeping deeply." I smiled. The mask was shaking against my face. "I was dreaming about your mother," I said. "She was scolding me for being late for dinner." Nia laughed, a soft, genuine sound that filled the sterile room. "You are not going anywhere, Dad," she said. "We have things to do. Look." She held up the papers. "I just signed the papers to sell the mansion," she said. "A developer bought it. He is going to tear it down and build a park. No one will ever live in that house again." "Good," I said. "Burn it to the ground. Sow the earth with salt." I tried to sit up, but my body refused. The fluid in my lungs was like a heavy blanket pinning me to the mattress. I knew what this meant. I had seen enough death in my life to recognize the final approach. The engine was failing. The structure was compromising. It was time to close the project. Nia saw the look in my eyes. Her smile faded. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "don't look at me like that. The doctor said they can make you comfortable. We have money now. We can get the best specialists." I shook my head slowly. "Money cannot buy new lungs." "Nia," I said, "and it cannot buy more time when the contract is up." "My shift is over, baby girl." Tears welled up in her eyes. She gripped my hand harder as if she could anchor me to the earth by sheer force of will. "No," she whispered. "You just got back to me." "It is not fair. Life is not fair, Nia," I said. "But it is just. And this is a good ending. I gotta see you free. I gotta see him fall. That is all I wanted." I pointed a shaking finger toward the small bedside table where my personal effects were bagged. "Open the bag," I said. The blue envelope. Nia reached over and grabbed the clear plastic bag the police had collected. Inside was my wallet, my watch, and a folded blue envelope that I had carried in my jumpsuit pocket through the rain and the fire. She opened it. Inside were sheets of paper yellowed with age. She unfolded them on the bedspread. It was a drawing, a blueprint, drawn by hand in precise architectural ink. "What is this?" she asked, running her finger over the lines. "I drew that 20 years ago," I wheezed. "It was for your mother. We were going to build it down in the valley near the creek, a wrap-around porch so she could watch the sunset, a big kitchen with an island because she loved to bake, a workshop in the back for me." I looked at the drawing. I could see Rose standing on that porch. I could smell the pies cooling in that kitchen. "We never got to build it," I said. "The medical bills came, the work dried up, life got in the way." I looked at Nia. "Build it for me, Nia." She looked at the drawing, then back at me, tears streaming down her face. "Dad!" "Don't live in a penthouse," I said. "Don't live in a fortress. Build a home. Build this house. Put it somewhere quiet where the soil is good. Plant your roses. Get a dog. Find a man who knows how to fix a leaking faucet and who looks at you like you are the only light in the room." I paused to catch my breath. The edges of my vision were getting gray. "Build it," I whispered. "And every time you walk through the front door, know that I am the one holding up the roof." Nia pressed the blueprints to her chest. "I will build it, Dad," she promised. "Exactly like you drew it." "Good," I said. "That is good." The room seemed to be getting dimmer. The beep of the monitor was getting slower. It was a rhythmic lullaby. I closed my eyes. The pain was fading now. The fire in my chest was cooling down, turning into a gentle warmth. I thought about the last 2 weeks. I thought about the fear and the anger. I thought about the moment I walked out of that basement, leaving Chase Miller screaming in the ruins of his life. I felt no regret. I felt no guilt. I had done my job. A father's job is to protect, to provide, to serve. I heard Nia crying softly. I felt her head resting on my chest. "Don't cry, baby," I murmured. "The war is over. We won." I drifted. I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of the world, the weight of the secrets, the weight of the sickness, it all lifted off my shoulders. I saw a light. Not a tunnel. Just a porch. A wraparound porch with a swing moving gently in the breeze. And sitting on the swing wearing her favorite yellow dress was Rose. She looked up. She smiled. She patted the empty space beside her. "You are late, Booker," she seemed to say. "I had to finish a job," I told her. "Is it done?" she asked. "It is done," I said. "She is safe." I took a breath. A deep, clear breath that did not hurt. I squeezed Nia's hand one last time. "The foundation is solid," I whispered. And then I let go. The beep of the machine turned into a long, steady tone, but I did not hear it. I was already walking up the steps to the porch. I was already home. Nia sat there for a long time holding her father's hand. She did not scream. She did not wail. She simply sat in the silence, feeling the warmth of his love slowly fading from his skin. She looked at the blueprints on her lap. She traced the lines of the walls, the curve of the windows. She wiped her tears. She stood up. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Goodbye, Daddy," she whispered. She walked to the window and opened the blinds. The sun had broken through the clouds completely, now bathing the city in golden light. She looked down at the street. Somewhere out there, people were rushing to work, living their lives, unaware of the battle that had been fought for her soul. She picked up her phone. She dialed the number of the court-appointed lawyer. "Hello, Ms. Jenkins," Nia said. Her voice was strong. It was Silas's voice. "Yes, Ms. Lewis, I want to liquidate the assets immediately," Nia said. "And I need you to find me a contractor. The best one in the state. I have a project to start." "Of course. What are we building?" "We are building a legacy," Nia said, looking back at her father one last time. She walked out of the hospital room, clutching the blue envelope to her chest. She left the death behind. She walked into the sunlight, ready to build. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the earth, under the roots of the trees and the stones of the river, the spirit of the architect smiled. His masterpiece was finally complete. The seasons change quickly when you are too busy to watch them. It has been 12 months since I buried my father on a quiet Tuesday morning under an old oak tree. 12 months of grief and 12 months of hard labor. The doctors told me to rest, but I could not rest. I had a set of blueprints in a blue envelope, and I had a promise to keep. I stood on the wrap-around porch of the new house. It was built exactly to his specifications. Every beam, every window, every nail was placed where Silas Lewis had intended it to be 20 years ago. The house sat in a valley where the soil was rich and dark. The air smelled of cedar wood and wet earth and roses. Hundreds of yellow roses were blooming along the fence line, vibrant and defiant against the green grass. Today the driveway was full of cars, but they were not the luxury sedans of Chase's friends. They were old minivans and dented hatchbacks. The people standing on my lawn were not holding champagne flutes. They were holding their children. They were women with tired eyes and bruised spirits. Women who had packed their lives into garbage bags in the middle of the night just to escape. I walked to the microphone set up on the porch steps. I wore a simple yellow dress, the same color my mother used to wear. I looked out at the crowd. "Welcome," I said. My voice did not shake. "Welcome to the Silas house." I looked at the sign hanging above the front door. It was hand-carved from mahogany. The Silas Foundation. A sanctuary for new beginnings. "This is not a shelter," I told them. "This is a home." It was designed by a man who believed that the foundation is the most important part of any structure. He believed that if the foundation is strong, the house can weather any storm. He taught me that dignity is not something you buy, it is something you build. I picked up a pair of scissors. I did not cut a ribbon. Instead, I cut a heavy steel chain that we had draped across the stairs, symbolizing the breaking of the cycle. The chain fell to the wooden floor with a heavy clatter. The women cheered. It was not polite applause. It was the sound of relief. It was the sound of hope. I spent the afternoon walking through the house, showing them the rooms. The big kitchen with the island where we would bake pies. The workshop in the back where we would teach them trades so they would never be financially dependent on anyone again. I watched children playing in the garden, running through the roses, safe and happy. This was his legacy. He did not leave me an empire of blood money. He left me a fortress of kindness. But as the sun began to set and the guests began to leave, my mind drifted to a very different place. A place without sun, a place without roses. Hundreds of miles away, inside the high-security wing of the Federal Correctional Institution, Chase Miller was learning a new definition of home. His cell was 6 feet by 8 feet. The walls were gray concrete that sweated in the humidity. There was no privacy. There was no smart home system to protect him. Chase was on his knees, scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush. His hands, once manicured and soft, were raw and blistered. His expensive haircut was gone, replaced by a jagged buzz cut. He looked thinner. The arrogance had been starved out of him, leaving only a hollow shell of fear. He stopped scrubbing to wipe sweat from his eyes. He heard footsteps behind him. He flinched. He curled his shoulders inward, trying to make himself small. "You missed a spot," a deep voice rumbled. Chase looked up. Standing over him was a man named Marcus, serving life for armed robbery. Marcus had seen the video. Everyone in the cell block had seen the video. "I am sorry," Chase whispered, his voice trembling. "I will clean it again, please." Marcus did not smile. He did not yell. He simply kicked the bucket of dirty water over. The gray sludge spread across the floor, soaking Chase's uniform. "Clean it up," Marcus said, "and do it quietly. We don't like noise in this house." Chase scrambled to gather the water with his rag. He was crying, but he did not make a sound. He had learned the hard way that tears attracted predators. He had learned what it felt like to be helpless. He had learned what it felt like to be terrified in his own home. The universe has a way of balancing the scales. The man who used fear as a weapon was now drowning in it. The man who demanded discipline was now being disciplined by the world itself. Back in the valley, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. The last car had driven away. The house was quiet. I sat on the porch swing. It was made of solid oak suspended by heavy chains. I pushed off gently with my bare feet. The swing creaked a familiar, comforting rhythm. Back and forth, back and forth. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind rusting through the trees. I could smell the roses. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old pocket watch my father had carried. It had stopped working the day he died, frozen at the exact minute his heart stopped. I ran my thumb over the engraved case. "I did it, Dad," I whispered to the empty porch. "I built it." A breeze picked up, stirring the wind chimes hanging from the eaves. They tinkled softly, a melody that sounded like laughter. I felt a warmth settle over my shoulders. It wasn't the humid heat of the summer evening. It was a specific, familiar warmth, like a heavy work jacket being draped over me. I looked at the empty seat beside me on the swing. I didn't see him, but I knew he was there. I knew he was checking the joinery of the porch railing. I knew he was inspecting the grade of the soil. He was the architect. I was the builder. And together, we had constructed something that would last longer than any skyscraper. I looked up at the first star appearing in the twilight sky. It burned bright and steady. "Thank you," I said, "for the house, for the fight, for the truth." I put the watch back in my pocket. I stopped the swing. I stood up and walked to the front door. I turned the lock. It clicked with a solid, secure sound. I was safe. I walked into the warmth of the kitchen where the smell of apples and cinnamon was waiting. I had a pie to bake. The long winter was over. And finally the spring had come to stay. We often mistake silence for weakness and patience for submission. But in a world loud with lies, the quietest man in the room is usually the one watching, listening, and preparing. A father's love isn't just about providing. It's about protecting with a ferocity that defies death itself. Evil may scream for attention, wear expensive suits, and manipulate the truth, but it always forgets one thing. The truth has no expiration date. When you hurt a child, you don't just break a bone, you wake a sleeping lion. And lions, they don't roar until they strike. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that the truth always wins in the end. And tell me in the comments, what is the greatest lesson you ever learned from your father? Thank you for listening, and remember to protect the ones you love.